49 yards for the tie. On its way, and he missed it.
Not sure I was really surprised by that. Stillman and Company, it's a Reaction Monday presented by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Titans Monday. Titans losers to the Jets 27-24 in overtime yesterday. Who was surprised by that?
I was surprised by it, but not as much as I really should have been, if we're going to be completely honest.
Ian, were you surprised by it?
A little bit, yeah.
Do you know who wasn't surprised by it? The guy who picked the Jets on Friday and on Sunday and got crushed when everybody was like, why would you pick the Jets? And I'm like, because I've seen this movie far too many times. And boy, did the Titans look bad yesterday. And I'm just going to start by saying this. If you want to hear cheerful discussion on a day after your team loses to the worst team arguably in the NFL, which is what the Jets are, this is not the show for you. I think there's another channel that does a lot of pro-Titans stuff and kisses the Titans' rear end. I think that might be the channel for you today. I think today is about keeping it real as far as the Titans are concerned. I saw a lot of people say yesterday after the game was over, they sent me messages and they said, you know, you called it. You're going to say how you were right and how you told us so. And I'm not going to sit here today and tell you, hey, I predicted the Titans were going to lose, so I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Because I also thought the Patriots were going to win yesterday, and obviously they didn't. And I made a lot of predictions over the years that have been wrong. What I want people to think about when it comes to why the Titans lost yesterday, I want them to think about the reaction that we had on this show last Monday when they beat Indianapolis, and I came away from it just like, man, they put the football in harm's way. They just looked too sloppy. They weren't good on this. They weren't good on that. Tannehill's making poor choices. And, boy, people got mad. Oh, my goodness. We beat the Colts, Jared. What are you talking about? What do you mean? What? And the truth is, this is a culmination of a lot of things. I said it at halftime yesterday in my Instagram reaction. The Titans are a mess. They are a complete and total mess right now. And by the way, at halftime, they were winning 9-7. So this isn't just some, hey, they lost, let's kill them today, because it's easy to do that. But a lot of people have reached out to me and said, you know, I blame so-and-so. I was at my cousin's 11th birthday party yesterday, and like 3 different people had explanations for why the Titans lost, and they were blaming different people every time. This is not going to be a show today where anybody starts a sentence with, if they had AJ or Julio out there, because this is the NFL. And by the way, the Jets didn't have their best defensive player either, and nobody talked about that. Derrick Henry and Harold Landry are the 2 people today who I don't have to criticize. Maybe Danico Autry. And honestly, I know a lot of people are going to be mad at Randy Bullock for missing a 49-yard kick, but we kind of know he's not a distance kicker. You can tell by every kick he makes, he is not a distance kicker. And when they picked up that delay of game, that's what bad teams do. When they picked up that delay of game in overtime, that moved that from what would have been a 44-yard kick comfortably in Bullock's range to a 49-yard kick not in Bullock's range, I'd have to say you have to put him on the list of people to not be upset with. But outside of that, anybody you want to blame for yesterday's loss, I think it is completely applicable to blame. I really do. And it's much bigger than just a loss to the Jets. I think the loss to the Jets is going to be what opens a lot of people's eyes to the problems that the Titans have right now. But it's much bigger than a loss to the Jets. Let's go on down the list. Start with whomever you want to start with as far as putting the blame is concerned. A lot of people want to put the blame on the coach, and I think that's fair. How many times do we have to see the Titans go out against a team that does not belong on the same field as them and end up in a dogfight or losing under Mike Vrabel's watch? We're good for that 2-3 times a season. Why do we have to be like that? Why can't Vrabel? We give him all the credit in the world when they beat Seattle. Because even against all the odds, they found a way. Beat New England. They found a way. Beat Dallas on Monday Night Football. They found a way. The Texans with no tackles. Why every time they play a team like the Jets, can he not have those boys ready to play? You do know that in the first quarter yesterday, the Jet fans were booing the Jets loudly. But if you score one touchdown on those 3 possessions or 4 possessions early when you were down in their red zone, if you score one touchdown, the game's over. The game is over. If you go up at any point like 17-0, 14-0, it's over. The Jet fans had already turned on the Jets. All the momentum was going your way. So why can't Vrabel ever have these guys ready to play when it's a game like this? So you want to blame the coach? Blame the coach today. I'll tell you what, I think they've got a lot of coaching staff issues. And I have been on Craig Aukerman, the special teams coach. I have been on his ass for years. And guess what happened yesterday? They got a punt and split 2 guys and ran right down the middle for a gain of 30. Way to go. What about Shane Bowen, his defensive coordinator, the guy that nobody wanted to be defensive coordinator except him? And all of a sudden, Bowen, and I thought Bowen had improved the unit a little bit. But I have to ask this question. You know the Jets average 6 points a game?
One of the worst offenses in the league.
They
going
scored
into this week.
27 points. And you know what kills me? I watch a lot of football. I don't watch the most football. I, on a given week, usually watch the Thursday night game. I usually watch the Titans game at noon. I usually watch the Sunday night game. And I usually watch the Monday night game. That 3:20 start, usually I'm pretty footballed out doing the pregame show, Titans game, then I got to process Titans game. So maybe more people watch more football than me. I don't know. I watch the Red Zone channel, whatever. Titans have to be the only team in the league that it feels like every freaking week there's some wide receiver that just runs right past a defensive back and is wide freaking open for a touchdown. The only team in the league that it happens almost every week. There was one yesterday where Adam Archuleta on CBS was breaking it down and goes, oh my goodness, he missed Corey Davis wide open down the field. And there's Davis with his hand in the air. Give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. So why can't Shane Bowen ever get this figured out? Every freaking week, there's a guy wide open for a touchdown. Every week. It's amazing. It's amazing. And Vrabel won't ever fire his ass. And then there's Downing. And Downing, I thought he called a pretty terrible game yesterday. I didn't think it was the worst game. I think defense is a much bigger worry about how they're calling plays and matching up than offense right now. But I just don't have a lot of confidence in a coordinator that gets quarterback sacked 7 times and isn't changing what they're doing. By the way, in the NFL, when you run a screen pass about 13 times, on the 14th time, they're going to sniff it out. And that's what they did. So coaching is clearly a problem. And it's been a problem. Shane Bowen and these touchdown lollipops, the busted coverages, that didn't just start happening yesterday. So it's been a problem. Special teams, it's been a problem. Missing field goals, that's been a problem. We didn't just start yesterday. Then there's the general manager. And I think he deserves a lot of blame too. We're the draft picks. I mean, seriously, 2 classes. We're the picks. We're the free agent guys. Where's Bud Dupree? Oh, he's hurt. Okay. Where's Julio Jones? Oh, he's hurt. I mean, John Robinson, and I like John Robinson, and I think he's a good general manager. And criticizing somebody for for a thing that they've done wrong does not mean that you think that person should be fired. It does not mean that you think that person is a bad coach or a bad general manager. But sometimes you do bad things. And John Robinson has rolled the dice a bunch, which is part of that job. That rolling the dice and taking calculated risks is part of sitting in that seat. And John Robinson has rolled the dice. And every time, He went into the season without a right tackle. He went into the season without a tight end. And you may say, well, Jared, they went out and got Julio Jones, so maybe they don't need a tight end. They needed a tight end yesterday. How'd Jeff Swaim do when he got blocked into the quarterback? How did Anthony Ferkser do when he dropped what could have been a game-winning touchdown? John Robinson took a risk on Caleb Farley, an injured player in the first round. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Caleb Farley's still injured. They took a tackle in the second round, who, by the way, apparently is now a guard. I don't know. But they can't figure out how to get this guy on the field. They took a corner in the third round, who Mike Vrabel will not play anymore. That he literally moved Christian Fulton, his best defensive back, to the nickel spot yesterday because he won't play the corner they took in the third round. And as I said, they don't have a right tackle. And for everybody scoring at home, and maybe I thought the last 2 weeks, maybe Quessenberry, they could fudge it for a season, and have him play. He's not a starting right tackle. He's not a starter. So when you ask backups to start, that's what happens. By the way, a lot of the mistakes that were made yesterday were made by backups who were asked to start. Josh Reynolds drops a bomb. Anthony Ferkser, a backup who's not a starter, drops a touchdown. Quessenberry's getting beat. Dane Cruikshank interferes. Breon Borders beat for a touchdown. Those are backups. And backups have to play, and you have to have depth, but they're backups. And that's how you lose in the NFL, when you don't have a starting tight end, when you don't have a starting right tackle. So you can blame John Robinson if you want. I was very disappointed with Ryan Tannehill yesterday. I thought his decision-making was downright awful. And it's not a one-week thing with Tannehill. We got mad about his decision-making last week. We got mad about his fumbling the first 2 weeks. Tannehill gets sacked 7 times. I'm sorry, but at some point, the quarterback has to make an adjustment. At some point, he has to see the blitz coming, and the ball has to come out. At some point, he's got to change the play at the line of scrimmage. One thing that we loved about Tannehill when he took the job from Marcus was, Marcus didn't really see the defense that well. Marcus didn't really change the play. Tannehill did those things. Where was that yesterday? There were plays where they were obviously blitzing, and Tannehill couldn't get the ball out. Tannehill throws passes to guys that get them killed. Threw a ball yesterday to Jeremy McNichols where the linebacker was right on him on a 2nd and 19. The guy gained 1 yard. A lot of good that does me. Threw a screen pass to Jeremy McNichols with the defensive lineman about to just wail on him. Ryan Tannehill took a delay of game in overtime for a 44-yard field goal with an iffy kicker who is not a distance guy. And Ryan Tannehill, with no timeouts, took a delay of game that made it a 49-yard kick. He is a $30 million a year quarterback. I mean, I thought we wanted to talk about the Super Bowl around here. I thought we wanted to talk about competing to be better than 11-5 and winning the AFC South last year and getting knocked out of the playoffs. Well, then you need more out of your quarterback. The truth is, you can blame whoever you want to blame for yesterday, unless their name is Harold Landry or Derrick Henry. You can blame anyone you want to. Titans go out, have to bring in a new punter. They like this guy, Shank. This is the NFL, people. Nobody feels bad for you. Everybody has injuries. Last year, the Titans played a game at Cincinnati in which they had an entire backup offensive line in there, and it didn't matter. They found a way. If you want to be considered a good team in the NFL, if you want to think that your team has a possibility of competing for the Super Bowl, then you got to stop making excuses for the Titans. You got to be more critical about things they do. We said it on the show when they were trading for Julio Jones. Hey, if you do this, you're not going to have a lot of money left over. And if you do this, there's a worry that he might get hurt. And if you do this, there's a worry that he might be a little too old. And if you do this, there's a worry that he might be a bad teammate. And guess what we've had to discuss for the first month of the football season? All of these things. Now, I think Julio's been a good teammate. I haven't seen anything that would drive me one way or another. But again, those are the risks that they've been taking that we were critical of. We hear other people, oh, man, Julio Jones, this offense going to score 85 billion points a game. You didn't hear that over here. I told you guys about Taylor Lewan's contract before the season. I said during the offseason, you got to get Ben Jones to take a pay cut. What do you mean, Jared? Tell Ben Jones to take a pay cut. What do you mean, cut Ben Jones? You notice Ben Jones gets hurt every game. Literally every game he's down on the ground. So, like, this, here's the problem. This wasn't just a loss to the Jets. Now, the NFL is a week-to-week league, which means that the Titans could have the best week of practice we've ever seen, blow Jacksonville out by 50, and everybody feel better about themselves next week. Totally possible. It's also possible that the Titans, who dropped this game, a game that we thought there was no way that they should lose, that they could go on and beat Buffalo on Monday night, and all of a sudden be like, hey, they beat Buffalo on Monday night. They're one of the best teams in the AFC. Here you go. It's all possible. It's the NFL. But ultimately, what we saw yesterday, and this is what scares me for the rest of the season, what we saw yesterday was a continuation of what we've been seeing, not an aberration of what we've been seeing. I said the Friday 2 weeks ago, before the Colts game, I said we need to see the killer instinct out of the Titans. They got the Indianapolis Colts at 0-2 coming in here, and they know they're down, and you're going to get their best punch. And I want to see a foot on the neck of the Indianapolis Colts. And we all know they could have blown the Colts out last week, and they didn't. Where's that killer instinct? Titans were up 9-0 yesterday. The fans were turning on the Jets. Put two of those balls in the end zone, that game is over. That game is over. They couldn't do it. Roster's not deep enough. They have backups playing starting positions. Without Arthur Smith, all of a sudden, the quarterback is making head-scratching decisions. It's a $30 million 10th-year quarterback. I'm sorry. No excuses. I'm sure there's Jared, what's he supposed to do with that offensive line in front of him? It's the same offensive line except for Quessenberry. It's the same offensive line that he started with when he came in as your backup quarterback and ended up taking you to the AFC title game. Same offensive line coach. Same offensive line. He is a $30 million a year quarterback who openly complained about not making the Pro Bowl last year. You don't take delays of game when you need those 5 yards for a field goal in overtime. Figure it out. It's a continuation of what we've seen this season. Crybaby Taylor Lewan. Oh, man. Watch, Taylor will go out next week against Jacksonville, not give up a sack. Well, he'll hold a whole press conference on his tour bus and talk about how everybody's – I don't care anymore. Like, we've seen now with the Titans, what we saw yesterday is the culmination of a lot of arrogance. I asked Vrabel, we asked Robinson when they made Shane Bowen defensive coordinator, what do you do to earn the job? And at no point did they ever shoot us straight. Continuity is important. Yeah, you know what continuity I see? DBs getting beat on busted coverages with wide receivers with their hands in that. Throw me the ball, throw me the ball, throw me the ball. Touchdown. This team averages 6 freaking points a game, and you gave up 27. So they can beat the Jags by $5 million. They'll win some games they shouldn't win this year. They'll probably win the division. You want to go win a Super Bowl? Because that's what everybody was talking about a month ago. We want to talk about the Super Bowl? Everybody needs to be more accountable. The general manager needs to be more accountable. The coach needs to be more accountable. The coaching staff needs to be more accountable. The quarterback needs to be more accountable. Everybody except the running back needs to be more accountable right now. So if you want to start talking Super Bowl, that's what we're going to need to see. If not, they'll be the same Titans they've been for the last couple of years. And that run that they made in 2019 to the AFC Championship game, that's just like the Predators' run in 2017. It happened. We saw it. We know it's possible. Guess how hard it is to get back. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. If you want to line the calls up, go ahead. I'm not saying the season's over. I'm not saying that a loss to the Jets means the Titans can't end up in the AFC divisional round or whatever. But I'm just telling you, there are problems that are not getting addressed. because it is too convenient to just not bother with them. Your team doesn't have a tight end. Okay. Ferks are dropped. You lose. It's as simple as that. You don't have a right tackle, 7 sacks. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll go ahead and line up the calls now, but we get Caroline's reaction to the Titans and the situation they find themselves in the game yesterday. Ian, and your thoughts and your texts as well. We're rolling. 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company is delivered. Is delivered by TriStar Moving. We are streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube thanks to the law offices of Amanda Gentry. Reaction Monday is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. It's ESPN 1025 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app.
How much was health, Mike, you think, a part of the protection issues, too? Obviously, Ben goes down, comes back, Taylor comes back.
I mean, all these million excuses, they're all going to be valid, but we're not going to use them. We're going to have to understand that, how we have to try to play the game based on who's available and how they feel. And, they fight. I mean, guys are fighting, guys are going back in there. I appreciate that. It's just unfortunate that, we suffered some of those things.
That was Vrabel yesterday. I give Vrabel credit on the no excuses. But no excuses.
There should be no excuses.
I'm not listening to him today. If you call in and I see your calls and we will get to them, if you call in today and you say, well, AJ and Julio were out, I don't care. I don't care.
If AJ and Julio could have been out there, but Ryan Tannehill cannot get them the ball when he's on the ground. I don't think having AJ and Julio would have made really any sort of difference.
I mean, I kind of disagree, but that doesn't matter because it's the NFL and they didn't play.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't play.
You can play revisionist history if you'd like to.
When you go back to the AFC Championship game, you had Tremaine Brock Sr. starting at corner in the AFC title game. If you're going to get to the Super Bowl, somebody's going to get hurt. I texted Joe Rexroth this morning when I flipped on the morning show, and I heard them sitting there, and Joe was talking about, I think if AJ and Julio are out there, and I said, guess what? If Marcus Robertson and Blaine Bishop are in the game in Super Bowl 34, I'm guessing that Kurt Warner doesn't throw a lollipop over the top to Isaac Bruce for a touchdown. But guess what? They weren't. And you still have to find a way. You still have to find a way. I don't feel any better about losing Super Bowl 34 without those two guys and Yancey Thickman at wide receiver because they got hurt. Because nobody cares. Nobody cares. So I can at least give Vrabel credit for saying that. What was your reaction to yesterday?
I mean, just on every side of the ball, it was sloppy, it was lazy. You can't win games whenever you don't convert any of your trips to the red zone in the first half. I mean, the Titans get in the end zone on at least one of those trips to the red zone, you win that game. But they didn't. Protect Ryan Tannehill. I mean, the Jets... I understand that they have one of the best red zone defenses in the NFL, but you have to get things moving. You have to get the ball moving. Derrick Henry ran for over 150 yards against the Jets, and the Titans still cannot get a win. You cannot rely that heavily on Derrick Henry. And the more and more that you continue to rely on him, the more and more that he's going to need rest. And you're going into an incredibly difficult stretch where you need a 100% Derrick Henry. Obviously, if you can't even get a win against the Jets, that's going to be an incredibly difficult stretch against the Chiefs, against the Rams, against the Bills, and you need a healthy Derrick Henry. I mean, one sack on the day. I have to give Harold Landry credit for at least causing a little bit of pressure.
Played his ass off yesterday.
But one sack. I mean, where was the defense? Where was Jackrabbit Jenkins? Gave up 2 50-plus yard plays. The defensive backs consistently playing 7, 8, 9, 10 yards off of their receivers.
And still get beat deep.
And still getting beat deep. I mean, on every side of the ball, other than, like you said, Derrick Henry, who played his ass off, Harold Landry, who played his ass off. I didn't see
McNichols.
any. Yeah.
Dropped the ball, but other than that.
I mean, when Jeremy McNichols is your leading receiver, and I understand AJ and Julio were out of that game, but when Jeremy McNichols is your leading receiver, I have to give him credit. But just sloppy, gross game from the Titans.
It was the problem I have with a lot of that, though, is everything you just brought up, none of it's new.
That offensive line, not new.
It's
Defense,
not new, right?
Not new. No pressure. You can't pressure the quarterback.
Why are they 10 yards off the receivers? I don't know.
That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
And today, Vrabel was basically like, yeah, that's not what we coach him to do. Well, guess what? Like, either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the no excuses. That line that Floyd taught us, which came from Belichick, and Floyd told me that he regretted telling me this line for this exact reason. Either you are coaching it or you are allowing it to happen. And so I'm sure Shane Bowen is not coaching every game they play in for these wide receivers to just run right by the DB and say, hey, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. I'm sure he's not coaching that, but he's allowing it to happen, and it keeps happening. And I'm tired of it happening. And if you don't change anything, then it's going to keep happening. So the Titans find themselves in a lot of trouble. I mean, they find that team averages 6 points a game. Titans find themselves in a lot of trouble. And I don't know if there's like a nice way about it to sit there and say, because I will say this again, they're going to win more games this year. Like, I said all week last week I was scared to death of the Jets game. I picked the Jets to win on Sunday. I kind of saw this coming. The Titans are going to win the division this year. Like, the Titans are going to make the playoffs. The Titans are going to win a lot of games. Like, they're going to beat New England. They're going to probably win this week against Jacksonville. They're going to beat the Saints. They're going to win games. But there's a difference between winning games and being a legitimate competitor. People got mad at me last year after I watched them play Cleveland and Green Bay. I'm like, they can't stop anybody. They have no chance of winning in the playoffs. And everybody's like, what do you mean, Jared? Anything can happen. You brought up the fact that they're over-relying on Derrick Henry. Here's my theory. He's the only one they can rely on.
That's also true.
He's the only one. What tight end can you rely on in a tough spot? Like, let's use the good Titan teams. Forget about, the recent. Let's compare this to the old Titans. They relied on Eddie George a lot. He led the league in carries. But you could rely on Frank Wycheck. You could rely on Derek Mason and Kevin Dyson. And you could rely on that defense to get a sack. It didn't have to be Javon Kearse. It could be Josh Evans or Henry Ford or Kenny Holmes or Kevin Carter or Albert Hainsworth or Jason Fisk. But those guys got sacks. You could rely on those guys. Who can you rely on this team? On defense, who can you rely on?
Harold Landry.
Maybe. Harold had like 5 sacks last year. I think he's got 2 or 3 this year. He's played really, really well.
Christian Fulton.
Last week, they moved him inside, and I thought Fulton had his worst game this season. And maybe that was them moving him. But, I mean, the DBs as a whole right now are getting beat by everybody. They got beat by Corey Davis, the guy you absolutely can't rely on. They got embarrassed by Corey Davis. You can't rely on kicker, can't rely on punter, can't rely on your offensive line to block, and you seriously can't rely on them to stay healthy. You can't rely on this team right now. There's nobody. I can't even rely on the quarterback. And I'll say this. The quarterback's going to be tough. He's going to stay healthy. The quarterback's going to make some good plays. In a nutshell, if Tannehill played another position, he probably would be devoid of blame right now. But he's a quarterback. So when you get sacked 7 times, you got to figure out how to keep that from happening. When you take a delay a game in overtime, you got to keep that from happening. You got to win your team the game. So outside of when the Jets went prevent and Tannehill drove him down the field and scored a touchdown, I didn't feel great about Tannehill. When you're inside the red zone, you got to find a way to get that ball in there. You make $30 million a year. You make more than double what Derrick Henry makes. So you got to find a way. So that's my biggest issue with the Titans right now is you can't rely on them. And there's almost this sense of entitlement that I feel from the fans sometimes. And this is why I think this is an important show today. Because every fan base is always going to want you to say that their team's going to win. And every fan base is always going to want to believe that their team can compete for the Super Bowl. And every fan base is always going to want to look at their glass as half full. That's what fans do. It's the job of the people running the team to not look at it that way. You know the old saying, if you listen to the fans, pretty soon you're sitting with the fans. And I see a lot of decisions that the fans could say, oh, okay, yeah, hey, yeah, we need Julio Jones, yes. No other team in the league was willing to do what you did to get Julio. No other team. There are other teams that think that they can compete for the Super Bowl right now too, right? Like Cleveland thinks they can compete for the Super Bowl. Baltimore thinks they can compete for the Super Bowl. And they were not willing to take on the contract and give up a second-round pick. And you were. Why? Because you can't rely on Julio Jones. Week 4, where's Julio? I don't know. Can't rely on it. Can't rely on A.J. Brown. We've had this talk. I said this with A.J. in earshot, and he didn't like it. And I said, A.J.'s knees keep being an issue, and I wonder, at the end of the year when A.J. wants a new contract, if you should trade him so that you can get all the value and not spend any of the money, because how can you rely on a guy who's always hurt? Where's A.J. Brown? Taylor Lewan makes $14.9 million a year. Can't rely on him. Can't rely on Saffold and his 12.5. Can't rely on Jones and his 7. Can't rely on these guys right now. And I just don't think you can win a lot of games in the NFL when you can't rely on people. I think that's the hallmark of what made Vrabel a great NFL player, was that on those Patriot teams, you could rely on Mike Vrabel. You could rely on Tom Brady. You could rely on Kevin Falk as a third down running back to be where he was supposed to be. That's how teams win, when you can rely on them. Do you know why I don't think the Cleveland Browns can't win a Super Bowl?
Why?
Because you can't rely on Baker Mayfield. You cannot rely on him to take you all the way through the playoffs. So I get it. I get it. I know that a lot of people are going to be mad, and a lot of people are going to say it's just one loss, and a lot of people, guys, it's the NFL. And I think the Titans need a little tough love today. Let's get to your phones on it next. You have a point, keep that thought. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Reaction Monday is delivered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Join us in partnering with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's Light the Night. Light the Night brings light to the darkness of cancer through hope, research, and support for patients and families. Through this inspirational nationwide movement, we raise awareness and funding for groundbreaking research and treatment options to eliminate cancer. Nashville's Light the Night will be virtual and take place on November 4th. Learn more at lightthenight.org/TN.
Zach Wilson coming off a touchdown drive under center. Two receivers to the left. Play action, bootleg out to the right. He's got room to run. Setting up, looking downfield. He's going to heave a bomb for Corey Davis at the goal line. Into the end zone. He's got it! That's a Jet touchdown! Zach Wilson unloads from 53 yards to Corey Davis. And the Jets have the lead back.
Oh, God. Bob Wischusen on the Jets call. Oh, God. Corey Davis got off yesterday. And it had nothing to do with you. With Corey Davis. It had everything to do with you. Mm-hmm. He could have had 100 more yards. I mean, there was that one play where he was doing jumping jacks asking for the football. Let me say this about Zach Wilson, and we'll right to your phones. Mm-hmm. Reaction Monday, by the way, presented by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, Titans Monday. They're going to ruin him. That kid's got talent.
Yes,
Zach Wilson, they're going to ruin him. Like, I am convinced of it, that in 3 years, we're all going to be sitting here saying, Zach Wilson sucks. And they are going to ruin him. They're going to ruin him because they're the Jets, and that's what they do. That kid's got some talent. Let's go to your phones. Adam has been waiting patiently. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam, going to kick us off today. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, man, a few things. Number one, if anybody else felt like, how can we lose the Jets? We should have lost by 30. They missed a lot of throws. Like, we could have lost that game badly. The Titans did something a few years ago when we got waxed 59-0. Bud Adams come out, and he's like, hey, nobody's job's safe. They need something similar to that, honestly. Like, you talk about accountability. That's beautiful. That's the best way to put it is, like, I need somebody to threaten. Like, get rid of Janoris Jenkins. Why not? He's here for leadership. This dude's got burnt every single game, something like that. And I'm really unhappy with, like, Farley and Dupree and all these dudes that have been out, and you didn't address the tight end position. Those are all my big concerns. The tight end, glaring need yesterday. Corners getting toasted left and right. We definitely need accountability, 100%.
Thank you for the call. I just don't think that you all of a sudden go from being a not accountable group to being an accountable group. And I know Vrabel preaches accountability and things like that. I have a hard time with the Shane Bowen thing. Like, that's where I have a really hard time. And I like Shane, but I just don't think he's a good defensive coordinator. I'm so tired of the busted coverages. Like, that's what coordinating is to make sure that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Adam sitting here wants to get rid of Jack Rabbit Jenkins. Well, who's going to play corner? I mean, I agree with you. I think Jack Rabbit kind of sucks. But who's going to play corner if you get rid of him? You don't have an option. So unless you want to put Breon Borders out there, who's not a starter in the NFL, you're stuck with him. But, I mean, it just feels, those are all off-season issues, the accountability stuff. And that's the other problem, too, is I just don't think, no one's going to raise their hand in the air in a league like this and in a world like this, raise their hand in the air and say, yeah, guys, I'm the one who's screwing everything up. But when you take injured players and you sign injured players and you trade for injured players and then you lose a game because you have so many injured players, I'm not going to feel bad for you. And I don't feel bad for John Robinson. And when you've got a special teams coach you'll never fire and they take a punt return and split two guys right up the middle. I mean, I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that. I mean, I can't believe Ackerman's still here, but this has been a fight I've been fighting for forever, and nobody seems to listen. But just ask yourself, when's the last time the Titans blocked a kick? When's the last time they returned a kick? When's the last time they blocked a punt? When's the last time they did anything on special teams? I mean, we're just hopeful that the guy will make a field goal inside of 50. But when's the last time that special teams was actually an advantage for the Titans? So I agree with the caller. I just don't think you're going to see that. And I don't believe in an owner coming out and saying, they're all fired if they don't turn it around. I don't believe in that. I know it worked when, the playoffs and pink slips headline at 99. I know it worked, but I don't believe in that. But I do think that the organization at times lacks accountability. And I do wonder this, and I said this to you before we started the show. When they made their run in 2019, they had Logan Ryan, they had Jarrell Casey, they had Wesley Woodyard, they had leadership guys. Are these leaders? Are they that kind of guy? Is Byard the same kind of leader Logan was? Is Derrick Henry the same kind of leader Casey was? And I don't know the answer to that.
See, and that's kind of what this team feels like, is there's just no it feels like there's no leadership there. There's no guy that can turn this team around and say, no, we did see a nice shift of momentum in the Seattle game. I do have to give them credit for that. The second half was significantly better than the first half. But it seemed like this game yesterday, it was just slow laziness. Like there was no guy out there to light a fire under their butts and say, let's actually go out there and execute.
Well, Derrick Henry tried.
And Derrick Henry did try, but it's frustrating
that
when it gets to the point where Derrick Henry, a guy who typically does not really
But did you notice
speak
that
up
twice
and say much.
yesterday, offensive linemen got in the way of Derrick Henry breaking a touchdown run?
Yes, I did.
Nate Davis and Roger Saffold. By the way, Nate Davis, and
Nate
I don't usually say this, and I know a lot of people say I say a lot of stuff. I heard this. I was watching when the Predators were trying to make the playoffs. It was Dallas or I don't know, some team that I was watching a game that involved the Predators but wasn't the Predators. And I was like, these announcers are wild because they were talking on the broadcast like, oh, yeah, so-and-so just needs to get his head in the game. I'm like, wow, that's something like you used to hear in Little League.
Uh-huh.
Nate Davis got to get his head in the game because his head is not in the game right now. He's missing guys. He's letting guys hit Tannehill like Bobby Wagner did in week 2. He's in the way when Derrick Henry, block the guy and get your ass out of the way. And if he does, Derrick's in the end zone for Nate Davis has got to get his head in the game because it's not. I think Jones is probably hurt. I think Saffold's probably hurt. And we all know where Taylor's head is. Nate Davis needs to get his head in the game.
I think my overall theme from yesterday was that the Titans consistently made it more difficult on themselves to win that game.
If Aaron Brewer, and I thought this was the play.
The muffed snap.
I thought this was the play that changed the game. I think there were a couple. But I think the big play that changed the game was the bad snap. And you know where I have no sympathy for the Titans on this? Well, Ben Jones got hurt. And so, first of all, Ben Jones always gets hurt. Secondly, Brewer didn't have a lot of practice time because he was hurt training camp. So
those are all excuses.
When you rely on injured guys, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. This is the NFL. If I can't have a center who can snap the ball out of shotgun, I don't even know what I'm doing with a center. And Ben Jones can't stay healthy. Ben Jones gets hurt every game. Every game he gets hurt. So, you put yourself in that position. Guess what's going to happen in a couple of weeks? Greg Gumbel, or they may not even get Greg Gumbel anymore. We may be permanently on the Tom McCarthy game. He's going to say on a CBS broadcast, there's an injured Titan down on the field. Let's see. It looks like it's Ben Jones, the center, will be right back. And Brewer's going back in there to snap. And guess what? Nobody in the league feels bad for you. Right back to your phones next. 615-737-1025. I try to get to more calls, but we got derailed. It's going to be like this today, people, but we will get to your phones. We will get to your reaction because it is a Reaction Monday powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. 1025, The Game has your chance to win Preds tickets during the month of October. Just post a picture of your radio dial set to 1025 The Game on social media, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. So I guess if we're talking right now, it'd have to be Twitter.
It would have to be Twitter. RIP to Facebook and Instagram for the day.
Tag The Game and use hashtag TicketDash to be qualified instantly to win. Show us your dash, brought to you by Social Furniture. Shop local, shop social. I promised phones. Phones is where we are on a Reaction Monday powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Titans and Truth. Chris is up next. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, what's going on, Jared?
What's up? Go ahead.
First, Miss Caroline, before we get started, how you doing? I would like to personally invite you on the Titans and Truth next month for Ladies' Night.
I would love to.
I would love to have you on.
Chris, it's a Monday. Let's go.
All right, let's get down to it because I got a few points to make that would take an hour. Same old Titans have come back, and it's a shame. Why do teams always seem to make history on us at every point? First touchdown since week 1 against us, for example. Coaching malpractice everywhere. Vrabel just seems like didn't he say in the offseason it wasn't the coach's fault, but it was the players' fault? J-Rob tried to go get players, and the defense is starting to look like the defense of last year. Isn't it time to think maybe there's a coaching problem? And it looked like Wisenhunt ball all over again. They played scared, and in your word, they were soft. They played not to lose instead of to win. You go for goals instead of touchdowns, and you gave the Jets life. You gave them hope. I said it all through my live stream. This is so uncomfortable because they let the Jets have hope. Every other team was able to sack Zach Wilson like 3, 4, 5 times. We only get to him once.
No, I agree with you, and I appreciate your call.
And Janoris is Jack Rabbit is Janoris. I ain't calling him Jack Rabbit no more. He is Janoris.
I have a hard time calling a grown man Jack Rabbit. Like, when they made his name Jack Rabbit on the roster, I was like, well, I guess this is like his name. You know, like I can't, like once you're officially, thank you, Chris. Once you're officially Jack Rabbit on the roster, like that's your name. So, and I have to call you by your name.
Yeah, that's his name.
But I can't call somebody, like, I have a hard time calling a grown man. It's like those guys that wear the Taylor Lewan is my dad t-shirts.
Those are so weird. Like, does anyone not realize how weird that is? He's not your dad.
It's embarrassing.
He's not your dad.
He's a bum right now.
Yeah.
He needs to play a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to say something, what Chris said, though, about the Titans and the giving the Jets confidence. I went and rewatched the game. I think there were a handful of things that gave the Jets confidence. One of them was a just clear breakdown in protection where Quisenberry got beat and Derrick Henry didn't pick up his man, and Tannehill got sacked early. And once the Jets knew that they could get to Tannehill, it was a lot like that 9-sack game 3 years ago against the Ravens, where once they knew they had you, they were coming after you. Like, here's the thing. This is the same offensive line. It's the same offensive line that Vrabel had to yank Mariota out of a preseason game against the Steelers for because he was afraid he was going to get hurt. It's the same offensive line that gave up 9 sacks to the Baltimore Ravens. It's the same offensive line that you struggled in all of that 2019. Even with Tannehill, we listened to an old Jared and the GM podcast just randomly. And I said, Caroline, you have to take a listen to this. And I was talking about, this was from like 3 years ago, right? 2 years ago.
But it sounds like it could have been from today.
It could have been from yesterday, where Floyd literally was like, oh, yeah, I just don't think you can go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs throwing the football because your offensive line can't block. And he was like, I don't care. No excuses. This is the NFL, but your line can't block. By the way, Tannehill threw for 181 in that game. Like, you can't do that.
And I would say
it's the same guys.
I would say on the other side of the ball as well, I think Zach Wilson was able to get way more confidence than he had any business getting.
I would say Landry and Autry look like they're pretty good.
They pressured him a good bit.
Kinston, who calls in all the time out of Memphis. Kinston called in complaining about Jeffrey Simmons last week, with TD. I got to give Kinston some credit. I mean, when they drafted Simmons, it was like, hey, this kid would be a game wrecker if he didn't tear his ACL. And when he gets back, and we've heard all these general managers that are like, oh, this is the year that Simmons, and this is like 2 years in a row that they've been like that. Oh, hey, last year he had the injury. This year, Simmons is going to blow up. Simmons was okay. This year, they're like, this year, Simmons is going to be like Aaron Donald. And I don't see it. I don't see it.
I think one thing that I often forget that just blows my mind is that he and A.J. Brown were in the same draft class. Because in my mind, I'm like, well, Jeffrey Simmons, he's still young. He's still new to the league. He still has time. But no, he's not new to the league anymore.
No, you got to make a decision on a fifth-year option on him this year. So he's not young anymore. Mm-hmm. Let's go to Ralph, who's up next. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Ralph.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
I have a few points. I believe that this team looked like 4 or 5 wins for this year. That's if their quarterback's staying healthy. I mean, players like Luan and Quisenberry and Jack Rabbit. I don't know why you were high on Jack Rabbit. He don't look any better than Jonathan Joseph. And
he's better than Jonathan Joseph.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing about Jack Rabbit, and I'll let you finish your point in a second. Jack Rabbit's going to get beat. Like, that's going to happen. I told everybody, he's going to be like Malcolm Butler. He's going to get beat, and when he gets beat, you're going to get mad, just like you got mad at Malcolm Butler. But he's a starting corner in the NFL. Mm-hmm. These other guys, you know, when you play backups, you get your rear end spanked. Go ahead, Ralph.
We're still there?
Yeah, go ahead. Continue with your point.
Yeah, so the team with this kind of player is like 4 or 5 win season, and I think we are so tired talking about Terrell Lewan, and I think the coach is like just sticking with them. That's not going to do them any good. They're going to be hurt, them and GM, for sticking with those kind of players.
Yep. Ralph, I appreciate your call. Here's the problem. It's October. Everybody out there is going to sit back and say, well, you know what, get rid of Taylor Lewan and play who? Get rid of Jack Rabbit Jenkins and go with Breon Borders?
Can't go with Caleb Farley.
No, can't go with Caleb
starting corner would look really good right now.
Nope. Right now, you know what you're getting out of your first 2 rounds out of the last 2 years? Nothing.
Well, I told you at the break that this game, it seemed like the Titans were doing everything to make it more difficult for themselves to win. Sure. And I think that also John Robinson is doing everything in the draft and in free agency to make it so much more difficult for the Titans to win, because they have the same draft and the same free agency as every other team. Teams are getting for picking up guys that can't contribute. Every other team is getting contribution. Titans aren't. Titans can't. So the guys are hurt.
You want to know what I want to know?
What?
What's wrong with Ravens? Like, we know he sucks.
Just bad?
Right, but like, how?
I mean, he played in the FCS.
And they didn't barely play at all last year.
Yeah, they barely played.
Him or
played
Farley.
1, maybe 2 games.
So how'd you fall in love with this guy?
That's a better question.
Yes.
See, but that's my point, right? Like, you draft this guy in the 2nd round. You can't get players on delivery and be like, oh, yeah, this guy sucks.
Everyone was praising his versatility. He can play guard. He can play tackle. He can fill in at center if need be.
Who cares?
But he can't do any of those right now.
On the offensive line, if you're going to be a starter, like if you're a starter and I'm going to pay you starter money, you play a position and that's your position. Jack Conklin is never going to play center, and I'm okay with it. Like, oh my goodness.
And
but that's a different
I think that may have been what they fell in love with was, oh, look at this value. We're getting 5-1 with Dylan Radins.
I hope they did.
But at the moment, you're getting 0 for 1.
I hope they did. I hope that wasn't why they picked him in the 2nd round. I hope that wasn't why. Got your phones. We're to them next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. And the coordinators. I got a thought on that next. It is Reaction Monday, powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Caroline's going to tell you about BetUS.
I want to tell all the sports bettors out there about my favorite sports book, BetUS. And if you were able to put some money on the Jets this past weekend on BetUS, you probably had a pretty little payday. So shout out to anyone who took Jared's betting advice this past week. But BetUS has been America's favorite sports book for over 25 years. And that is exactly why I endorse them. They have integrity. They have longevity. They've been around for a long time, and you know that you are going to get paid when you win with BetUS. Plus, they offer everything. They have live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, all kinds of crazy prop bets, anything you want to put money on. I can guarantee you BetUS has it. So call them today, and they will walk you through setting up an account. Their number is 1-800-79-BET-US. All you have to do is call 1-800-79-BET-US, and they will help you with setting up an account. Nobody in the industry gives bigger bonuses than BetUS. You can get up to 200% in bonuses. So if you call now, mention GAME, you can get a sign-up bonus on your first deposit. Nobody in the industry beats that. I bet at BetUS, so should you. So go now to BetUS.com. Join today, put in promo code GAME, and you can get a sign-up bonus on your first deposit. That is BetUS.com.
Stillman & Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. We are streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube thanks to the law offices of Amanda Gentry. And it is a Reaction Monday powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. It is a Titans Monday, and the Titans fall to the Jets 27-24 in overtime. They were actually playing for a tie at the end of the game, which is also amazing in and of itself when it comes to the Jets. But let me tell everybody out there, a tie is much better than a loss. Like I wanted everyone to know that going into overtime. A tie is a much better than a loss. I do, though. The coordinators. I think everybody, I was texting Chase McCabe earlier today, and I think one of my biggest issues with Vrabel is that I worry that Vrabel thinks too highly of his own guys on the coaching staff. When he had Dean Pease as coordinator and he had Arthur Smith as coordinator, it wasn't like those guys were perfect. I mean, we were talking about the offensive line during the break, and you said, how could the offensive line be this bad? And I said, look, this is who they are. Like, they gave up 9 sacks in a game to the Ravens.
But that doesn't make it okay.
Right, but I'm just telling you, they're not a pass-blocking offensive line. Even before they were a run-first team, they were not a pass-blocking offensive line. They only became a run-first team because Derrick Henry ran the ball for 99 yards against Jacksonville, and then Matt LaFleur, who was clearly holding Derrick Henry back that year, Matt LaFleur was like, maybe if we give the ball to Derrick, we have a shot to be pretty good. And that's why I've never thought Matt LaFleur was a good coach. So when he won all these games in Green Bay, I'm like, yeah, he's still a bad coach. People are like, what? He's winning all these games. Then the NFC Championship game comes up, and he kicks the field goal up by 8, and everybody's like, oh, yeah, maybe he's a bad coach. Oh, maybe. Let's see what happens when Aaron gets his way out of Green Bay. Let's see how Matt LaFleur coaches. But that's neither here nor there because people were mad at Arthur Smith, and I think Arthur's a pretty good coordinator. Dean Pease, I think everybody here kind of respected the rings with Dean Pease. Like, Dean was kind of like a kiss the rings. Dean's his guy. Dean knows what he's doing. But I'm tired of watching the same crap over and over again. It's when it comes to the coordinators. And I was texting with Chase, and I was like, one of my biggest issues is I think that Vrabel struggles at managing the coaching staff. Like, I think if Vrabel has an idea, I think Vrabel has a very hard time understanding that his idea was a bad idea. Like, oh, you know what? Shane will be a great coordinator. And once he decides Shane's a great coordinator, there's no way to get through to him. Yeah, remember when you played on the Patriots with Belichick and Romeo Crennel, and there wasn't 3 times a game where wide receivers just ran right behind defensive backs and threw their arms in the air and said, hey, throw us the ball, throw us the ball. That didn't happen as much. Like, maybe you need to make a change. And I'm not calling for them to fire Shane Bowen yet, but I'm just telling everybody it is certainly coming for me. Like, I thought the defense was improved from last season because they were getting some pressure on the quarterback, and that continued a little bit yesterday, not as much as I would have liked. But, again, big plays, busted coverages. Every game, busted coverages. At some point, the coordinator's got to answer for it. My beef with Craig Aukerman and the special teams, and I know that people don't get too worked up about special teams, but they should because the Titans special teams very rarely does anything that helps them win a game, and I stand with that. But Chase was like, oh, Downing has got to go. And I said to Chase, Downing's the least of my concerns with the coordinators. And that's not saying anything about Downing. That's saying something about the other two. I felt like yesterday, Downing and Tannehill both were culpable to some degree for those sacks. Like, at some point, the ball's got to come out sooner. When there were times in the game, and I went back and watched it this morning, there were times when the Jets blitzed, and the Titans beat them on the blitz. They threw a crossing route right to Josh Reynolds, and on 3rd and 5, when the Jets brought it, Reynolds gained like 13. And they did it again with Josh Reynolds. And they just, little small crossing route to Josh Reynolds. And it worked. And then all of a sudden, we didn't see it anymore. The Titans' answer to the Jets' pressure was to try to throw a screen or to have like a 5-step drop and Tannehill get laid out. And so, to me, those all kind of fall on the coordinators. And we can get mad about offensive line coach or, Tannehill picking up protections. I'm mad at all of it. But I do wonder if Vrabel is looking at these coordinators and expecting better than what we're getting. Or if Vrabel's just saying, hey, I know these guys are good coaches, so trust me, they're good coaches. And I'm fine. If you're a coach and you think that your coordinator or you think that your assistant coach is really good, even though things on the outside don't look that way, but in your heart your guy's good and you're willing to stick up for your guy, I'm fine with it. With the caveat that if it doesn't improve, then you go too. Mm-hmm. Which is why I was totally cool. I couldn't stand Laviolette's coaching staff. But I was fine when he didn't make changes after the 2019 season. And, they didn't do a lot. They brought in, what's his name for the power play. But they didn't make a lot of changes. But I was fine with it because it's like, okay, when these guys don't work out, you're the first to go. And Laviolette was. So I'm okay with that. But, the coordinators, I just don't feel like anything changes with these guys. And I'm getting to a point now where I just today, for example, Vrabel was asked a question about DBs playing off the ball. And he said to Luke Warsham, who asked the question, He said, yeah, I saw your tweet yesterday, and I knew you were going to ask about it, but we don't coach them to play 15 yards off, and we don't coach him to play 10 yards off, and we don't coach, whatever. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what you coach them to do.
They did it.
Paul Sandiford was a Hall of Fame women's basketball coach. He coached at Western Kentucky. He got him to the national championship. They lost to Stanford. And I think anybody who knows anything about sports knows the idea of Western Kentucky in any Final Four, but much less in the championship game. It's probably a big deal. Paul Sandiford, longtime women's basketball coach. When I was at Louisville for a year, he was our color commentator. And Coach Sandiford said to me, he goes, it's not what you know. It's what you can get them to do. So if Shane Bowen can't get them to press a wide receiver, then Shane Bowen needs to go and somebody else needs to be able to get them to press that wide receiver. And if Craig Ackerman can't get them to keep the punt returner from splitting them right up the middle, or for a new punter shanking a ball out of bounds, or finding a kicker that can reliably make a kick, then somebody else needs to be in there to do that. And again, I'm not calling for it today, but I'm close. And I just don't know if Vrabel has it in him to make that move. That if Vrabel can look at a decision that he's made, a guy he's vouched for, and said, hey, this guy, I believed in him, and I will believe in him for forever. At some point, you got to not believe in a guy. There was a women's basketball coach at Belmont, a guy by the name of Cam Newbauer, and I love Cam. Loved Cam when he was at Belmont. Mm-hmm. And I thought Cam was the greatest guy. Loved him. He got the Florida job. I was happy for him. I thought he was a good coach. I knew him a little bit because he was at Louisville. He came in when I was on my way out. And I really do. I thought Cam was a great guy and a great coach. All these articles come out about Cam Newbauer at Florida throwing basketballs at players and demeaning players and things like that. And I told somebody, I go, see, now I feel like sick to my stomach because I was out here saying this guy's a great coach and he's a great guy and I was wrong. If that's the case, I felt duped, but you got to be willing to say it. You got to be willing to admit it. And I'm not sure Vrabel can do that with his own guys. And I know he's fired a couple assistant coaches here and there. I'm not sure that Vrabel can sit there and fire Shane Bowen in the middle of the season and say, hey, I did it because, we're doing the same things over and over again and it wasn't working and we needed a change. So we're firing this guy and we're bringing Jim Schwartz, who's not my guy. We're bringing Jim Schwartz in to be defensive coordinator. I can't see him doing it.
And that's a problem.
Sure.
That is a problem.
Well, don't you think arrogance is probably, the biggest problem Vrabel has?
I would say yes, because that affects so much more than just the way that you may answer questions in a press conference. If Vrabel wants to answer questions any way he likes, that's fine with me. I just think that you have to be able to answer for some of the clear issues that the Titans have. And if Mike Vrabel wants to put his arrogance before what's best for the football team, and what does he say all the time? We do what is best for the football team. Mm-hmm. And I think he genuinely believes that. But whenever you can't step away and realize I was wrong about something or someone, then you're not doing what's best for the football team. And I don't think that Shane Bowen has showed so far that he's making decisions that positively, in fact, impact the football team.
So, again, I said today I'm not ready to call for them to fire Shane Bowen.
No, if
they did decide to fire Shane Bowen, I would celebrate the move. Vrabel made the move at 2-4 from Mariota to Tannehill. Now, remember, Mariota wasn't his guy. And he made the move from Mariota to Tannehill, and he said, I was just looking for a spark. Moving on from Bowen in the middle of the season would be a spark. And normally, I don't like the idea of changing coordinators in the middle of the year. But I've seen enough from Shane Bowen. I'm sick of the busted coverages. I'm sick of it. They bust 2 coverages every game. And it doesn't matter if it's Seattle or Arizona or the Jets. That team averages 6 points a game.
And you gave up 27.
27! 27! You do realize, they would have to play 5 games, averaging 6 points a game to get to 27.
Yes.
And so, I've seen enough. Chris Sanders texted me and said the wide receivers The wide receivers could not get off the press coverage. They only caught the pass when it was zone coverage. Ian, remember Floyd's response about not being able to get off press coverage?
Yeah, no excuses, really.
Can't play in the NFL if you can't get off press coverage. So, to me, then you don't have NFL receivers. And if you don't have NFL receivers, whose fault's that? 615-737-1025 is the phone number. By the way, was it just me? Or was it obvious that out of all these guys that everybody's loved, the Nick Westbrook-Akinas and the, people that you have to like convince yourself that's Josh Reynolds is by far the best receiver that they have. And he dropped what could have been a touchdown yesterday.
Yeah.
But he's by far, with this group that they have right now, he is easily the best receiver they have.
Then what's been the deal the past few weeks?
They've just talked themselves out of it.
Wonderful.
So that's what you do is you talk, well, this guy Bobby helps us over here a little bit more, and Johnny helps us over here, so then we don't need necessarily to have, and for whatever reason, that's their way of being able to talk themselves out of, playing the guy who's clearly the third best wide receiver on the team. I promise to your phones, I see you all waiting, and I see how long you've been waiting, which I appreciate. So phones next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Let me tell you about the FanDuel Sportsbook app. The final game of Week 4 is tonight. And my friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook app want you to get the most out of every play. That's why they're giving everybody a $10 risk-free bet every single week. All you have to do is bet a same-game parlay with 3 legs or more, and if your bet doesn't win, FanDuel will pay you back up to $10. You can bet Herbert, the over tonight for him, Derek Carr, the over, the point total over, however you'd like between the Chargers and the Raiders. Fun game, by the way. Easy payouts. It's easy to use, safe and secure in America's #1 sportsbook. If you're new to FanDuel Sportsbook, sign up with the promo code JGM to also receive a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code JGM. 21 and older and present in Tennessee. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile and web. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789.
How'd you evaluate how your receivers did yesterday?
Nobody did well enough. Head coach, assistant coaches, quarterback. We've been through this before. When you lose, we all have to do more. We all have to be better. I'm confident that we will. And so we'll see who we have this week. We'll see who's available this week and get them ready to go on the road to play a division team.
There you go. That was Vrabel today, and I think he's right. Nobody did well enough except Derrick Henry and Harold Landry. Would like everybody to know I thought Derrick Henry and Harold Landry did well enough. I promised phones. It is Reaction Monday, powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. It is a Titans Monday. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey has been waiting patiently on the defensive backs. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Trey. Trey. Oh, I hate leaving you waiting that long. Call us back. Let's go to Sean, who's up next here on Shane Bowen. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, good, Caroline. How y'all doing today, man?
Good.
I've been a Oilers/Titan fan since back in the 80s, man. I'm born and raised in Houston, so I'm in Houston now. And I witnessed Shane Bowen on the staff with Vrabel when he was in Houston. And when they brought him over, I was like, oh, God, really? We can't do any better than Shane Bowen. I've seen both of their work. And Vrabel was a good calling the defense here, which I cheered him on, because I'm a Titan fan. I was like, yeah, we keep sucking. But come on now. We could have done a lot better. Like, why isn't Jim Schwartz calling that defense?
Well, I think we know why Jim Schwartz isn't calling the defense. You know why. Sean, you know why Jim Schwartz isn't calling the defense.
I was listening to y'all the last segment. I was like, I can't wait till I wake up and see that Shane Bowen has been relieved of his duties for Jim Schwartz. I'm begging to see.
All right, thank you for your call. Sean, I hear you. Thank you for your call. Let's kick it around the room. You think at any point in the next month, Vrabel will fire Shane Bowen in the middle of the season and name Jim Schwartz defensive coordinator? Ian?
No.
Caroline?
No way.
Me neither. Come on, it's Vrabel.
Do you think he should?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Again, I am not going to call for them to fire Shane Bowen today. And I know, to me, when you say that they should fire a coach, fire a general manager, to me, there's a line. And that's the line. As a talk radio host, where, look, if I think somebody should be fired, I think they should be fired. But you need to discuss it before you say it. These people have families. This isn't something where you could just play around with whether or not they should fire somebody. So I tried to approach it like, if I were running the team, would I fire this guy today? Knowing that if that guy goes out and does well, then everything that happened after that, it's you turned your back to that. So if the Predators win the Stanley Cup this year, then then it's my fault that I said that they should fire David Poile and I'm a dummy. But when I decided it was time, it was time. And I look at it as if you own the team. Because once you make that move, you don't go back. It's easy to say, fire the coach, and then next week, Vrabel had him ready to play, and he's the... So that's how I take it. And so I'm not ready to say, fire Shane Bowen. But if they fired him, I wouldn't be against it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
You
aren't personally calling for his head.
Right. Now, look, if they go out next week and all of a sudden, I don't even think DJ Chark's healthy, and I don't even know who's going to be coaching for the Jags because Urban, there's a new video that comes out every 20 minutes.
Urban has been otherwise occupied.
Yes, Urban's compromised. Mm-hmm. But, if they throw bombs, if Trevor Lawrence is throwing bombs on the Titans next week, then Monday's show will have a sharper tone to it. Mm-hmm. Mark is up next. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Stillman.
Yep.
Hello?
Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, yeah. I'm a season ticket holder, and I'm trying hard to still believe in John Robson. But there was a young high school boy, football star, who grew up here in Nashville, and he was a fan, and his dream was to play for the Titans. We could have got him in the 6th round, and that's all I have to say about that.
Yep. Thank you for your call, Mark. He's talking about Trey Smith, the guard from Tennessee, who's now at Kansas City. I'm not going to slam the Titans for drafting Caleb Farley on the medicals and then say, why didn't they draft Trey Smith when the medicals were obviously very questionable? I mean, Trey Smith was a much better than the 6th-round type player, but the blood clotting and everything else, I don't know what the medicals said, and I'm not going to sit here and judge on that. I will say this. The draft classes for Robinson, and I've been saying this for a while, and I like Robinson. The draft classes for Robinson's, they're concerning. And the one thing that I just wish when I talk about holding people accountable that we would do more of, because we don't do it with Poyle and we don't do it with Robinson, and I don't think we do it with Vrabel, and I don't know why Mike Mularkey got treated the way he got treated. And I'm not here to go down the whole, visionist history about, what Mike Mularkey did or what didn't happen or whatever. But I remember the Titans were 8-4. And they were winning games like they won last week. And they were beating bad teams. And the fans hated him. Hated Mike Mularkey. And it had been 10 years since they were 8-4. And I'm sitting there like, look, man, I know what it's like to be on the other side of this, to be 4-8. I know what it's like to be 2-10. So I'm not going to sit here and complain about 8-4. And the fans just complained. And yet, around here, it's like, I can see, I thought this way. These draft classes for Robinson, these last 2 draft classes have been terrible. They will not play Elijah Molden. And I don't think they should play Elijah Molden. But then that says something to them drafting Elijah Molden. Monty Rice doesn't get on the field other than special teams. Dylan Radins can't be active. Caleb Farley can't get healthy.
Des Fitzpatrick isn't even on the team.
Des Fitzpatrick's on the practice squad. And if he can't make it over those receivers that played yesterday, I mean, good God. And then don't even go to last year's. I mean, oh, my goodness.
Christian Fulton, things are turning around.
Name me another player out of that draft class. Name me another player
who's
out
contributing?
Of that draft class. No. Name me another player out of that draft class, period, who's not Isaiah Wilson, because it's the most infamous pick ever.
I don't know.
Do you know who they picked in the 3rd round?
No.
Darrington Evans. Do you know who they picked in the 4th round?
I do not.
They didn't have a pick. They traded that for Tannehill. Do you know who they picked in the 5th round?
I do not.
Laurel Murchison. Do you know who they picked in the 6th round?
No.
Do you know who they picked in the 7th round?
No.
They picked a quarterback out of Hawaii by the name of Cole McDonald, who they cut like 2 weeks into training camp. They also picked Chris Jackson, though. And Chris Jackson's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when the best thing that you can say about your draft class is the 2nd round pick's okay, and Chris Jackson can be active on game days, unlike everybody else, that is a concern. I mean, look, the truth is, and I said this before the draft, I want to say I said this. I think I said this that week that you were here, but you weren't yet here.
Yes.
Where I took the 2 draft classes, and I said, look, you screw 2 draft classes up in a row, you're probably going to get fired. Floyd did not have – now, Floyd had much better draft classes than Robinson, but he did not have a great 2003 class and a great 2004 class. And that was the 2003 was Andre Woolfolk, Tyrone Calico, Ryan Long, Chris Brown. Now, those guys were NFL players. They just got hurt. Woolfolk sucked, but they were NFL players that got hurt. But it doesn't matter because if you get hurt, then you get hurt and, whatever. And then the next year, it was Ben Troop, and I think Antoine Odom and Travis LeBoy and Bo Schobel and, guys you've never heard of. And now they ended up getting some offensive line starters at the end of that 04 class. But they weren't, it wasn't like Javon Curse and Steve McNair and Eddie George and John Runyon and all the others, the gold mines Floyd had been hitting on. And a year later, Floyd got fired. He shouldn't have gotten fired. I think we all know that. But these draft classes, man, they're going to catch up with Robinson. And that's why I don't know who was on the scouting staff in 2019 compared to 2020 and 2021, but whoever was on the staff in 2019, like I need to go back and see if I still have in my email, and I probably don't, the draft release where they tell you who all's in the front office and who all's on the scouting staff and who all. I need to go look through that, find out whoever was there, and then I need to bring them back and fire whoever I have brought in to replace, because these draft classes are a mess. 615-737-1025. I have ignored the text line so far today on Reaction Monday. We will go to your texts on the Titans. We will do that coming up next. Their loss yesterday against the Jets. 615-737-1025. And I'm going to say something that people are going to be upset with coming up next. But just know that it's not anger that this is where it's coming from. It's concern. I hope that's a good enough tease. Stillman and Company, it's ESPN 1025 The Game. Edmunds, buying a car can be overwhelming, especially now that the demand is back and in full swing. Lucky for you, my friends at Edmunds have been taking the stress out of car shopping for over 50 years. Edmunds editors drive over 500,000 miles every year, testing thousands of hours on hundreds of new vehicles. They review almost every car on the market and rank the best ones in each category so you can narrow your search and compare options side by side to find the best vehicle for you. When you're ready, Edmunds makes it easy to find options in your area with accurate price estimates. They've got their top-rated awards, which are selected by Edmunds editors based on extensive testing and the rankings process, which considers performance, comfort, technology, fuel economy, and value. Edmunds is here to guide you to your perfect vehicle. Visit Edmunds.com to see their best car rankings and search for vehicles near you. That's EDMUNDS.com. For cars, there's Edmunds.
Brian, I know you'll obviously have time to digest the film, but as you walk out of here today, how many woulda, couldas, and ifs are there in your mind about this game?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at it, but obviously it wouldn't execute well enough in critical situations. Didn't score when we were down in the red zone. That obviously hurt us. Moved the ball early well, and then stalled out in the red zone. So we got to be able to score when we get down there. Battle back. Proud of the guys the way we battled through. In the second half, we're able to go tie it up in a critical situation. defense got a big stop there in overtime to give us the ball back, give us a chance. And, we didn't execute well enough as we got down into field goal range.
That was Ryan Tannehill after the game yesterday. I got to say something, and I know people are going to be mad, but Ian, back me up on this. When they made the change to Ryan Tannehill, and I see Ian's preoccupied, but when they made the change to Tannehill, I gave it 2 weeks, and I was like, I really like Tannehill. And I was a Marcus guy. Like through and through, thought Marcus should get another chance every time, thought it wasn't Marcus's fault, it was the line, it was this, it was that. And ultimately I knew when they pulled him in the Denver game, like that they didn't have a choice. And so I understood it, and they put in Tannehill, and after 2 games I'm like, hey, Tannehill's pretty good. And then I think it was like a month, he played the Jacksonville game where he took on the 2 defenders, went into the end zone, scored a touchdown, they beat the Chiefs, and I was like, he's a guy. Tannehill's guy. And when they didn't beat the Chiefs in the AFC title game, and people said, well, Tannehill can't win you that game. He's not supposed to. When it was Brady versus Tannehill, I wanted Tannehill. And remember, I love Tom Brady. But I wanted Tannehill over Brady. Last year, I thought Tannehill should have made the Pro Bowl. He didn't make the Pro Bowl. I was disappointed by the loss to the Ravens because I thought, hey, at some point they're going to take Derek away. And when they take Derek away, you've got to be the guy. This is the most down I have ever been on Ryan Tannehill. And it's not directly about yesterday's game. Because it'd be easy to say, well, he didn't throw any interceptions and he didn't fumble the ball, and so you can blame the line or you can blame his receivers or you can. He is a $30 million quarterback. They committed an extra year to him when they decided to trade for Julio Jones. That was their way of saying that next year they're not going to be interested in another quarterback. And next year after that, 2023, they're not going to be interested in another quarterback. Ryan Tannehill's their guy. And that was a commitment, that 23 commitment that I wasn't willing to make, remember? Mm-hmm. And they made it. And I watched yesterday. This is the Jets, people. You get in the red zone, you got to put that ball in the end zone. And you can make whatever excuse you want to make for Tannehill. Well, the line's not that good. It's the same line minus Jack Conklin that you got to the AFC Championship game with. It's the same line you went 11-5 and won the division with last year. It's the same line. So don't be blaming the line. Well, the receivers, and you know how many games Peyton Manning won because of Austin Collie and Pierre Garçon and Anthony Gonzalez, the congressman? How many games Tom Brady has won over the years with Riche Caldwell? How many times it's David Patton, David Givens, Deion Branch, Christian Flourier, and yet Brady finds a way? I know Brady's got players now, but he found a way for a long time.
Well, I don't think that the Titans necessarily need Ryan Tannehill to be Peyton Manning or Tom Brady.
No, they don't. They need him to find a way. And I don't need him to be Brett Favre. But I also need him to not be the bad things that were Brett Favre. Where, Brett would throw 3 interceptions in a game. I don't need that. I'm not asking you to do anything except take care of the football and make good decisions. And this year, Ryan Tannehill has not done that. I'm sorry. Again, I'm a Tannehill supporter. But when I'm paying you $30 million a year, and I am talking openly every day with the fan base about Super Bowl, or AFC Championship game, or beating the Chiefs and beating the Bills, and I need you to not take a delay of game penalty with under 30 seconds to go when you know you've got an unreliable kicker who is not a distance guy, and you take a delay of game on the 26-yard line. You can't do that. This is the NFL. You can't do that in the NFL. And Vrabel yesterday was asked about it. Vrabel's like, we didn't have timeout. So we didn't have a timeout. Play clock gets 0, And that's where the quarterback has to be the one to take over. I compared it earlier today to being an airplane pilot. The airplane pilot is not the most important person at Delta. If you were to ask the stockholders or whatever, they'd say, well, there's the CEO, and there's the president, and there's the CFO, and the COO, and the head of the airline division, and the airport. But when it comes to landing a plane, there is nobody more important than that pilot. And when you are in overtime and you're trying to win the game or force a tie, there is nobody more important with no timeouts than that quarterback. And you got to manage everything at one time. And that's why you make $30 million. That's why you make double Derrick Henry. And yesterday, I thought Ryan Tannehill made mistakes. I thought Ryan Tannehill panicked with the football at times. Now, he didn't throw interceptions, but this just trend of bad decision-making. This is a new Ryan Tannehill. The hallmark of what made Ryan Tannehill the Ryan Tannehill that I love is that, hey, Ryan's not going to go out there and throw for 350 now. Ryan's not going to be lighting up the ball yard. But Ryan's going to take care of the football. Ryan's going to put the team in good positions to win. Ryan is going to see the defense before it happens. I can't tell you how many times yesterday he misread a blitz. Where he thought they were going to blitz, they dropped out of it. Where he thought they were going to drop out of it, they came. Where he thought it was coming from here and it came from there. You know, those 7 sacks, and I know everyone wants to put on the offensive line, the quarterback is culpable in that a little bit. The coordinator is culpable. The running backs and protection are culpable. I mean, I thought Todd Downing yesterday was trying to get 5 guys out in the formation, and I'm like, dude, you got to leave somebody in the block. It's obvious in a passing down that somebody's got to stay in the block. You can't send 5 guys out in the formation right now. So he's culpable. But Tannehill's culpable too. He's the quarterback. I mean, at times yesterday you could see the Jets come to blitz, and it's like, Ryan, babe, that ball's got to come out now. Like, you got to see that at the line and say, okay, hold on, check. Like, let's go, sharp, crisp, get it out, go. Like, nothing. And so it's the quarterback's responsibility. And so I'm sorry, but to me, all the money invested in Ryan Tannehill is banking on good decision-making, efficient football, being good in the red zone, and he's not doing any of that right now. And this is the most down I have ever been on Ryan Tannehill. Now, again, I'm not going to say that he shouldn't be the quarterback. You're stuck with him for the next 3 years. But I really, I think I've fought a lot on the radio and, with people around the country who have looked at a Ryan Tannehill and said, yeah, he's like Andy Dalton, or he's like Kirk Cousins, or he's like, these guys that we all think stink. And like, no, Tannehill, I'm telling you, Tannehill can. And right now he's playing like an Andy Dalton. I'm sorry. You were saying?
Well, at that point that you were making, that I said earlier that the Titans were doing everything in their power to make it so much more difficult for them to win that game. And he was a repeat offender of holding onto the football for way too long yesterday. Because I am going to place a lot of blame on the offensive line, but Ryan Tannehill has got to get rid of the ball or he doesn't get sacked. Ryan Tannehill has got to get the ball out of his hands, because if you don't, you make it more difficult for your kicker to make that kick, and then you lose the game. And one of our texters texted in and said Tannehill had some poor decisions, but he still got us in a position to win the game and tie the game despite his mistakes.
When did he get you in position to win the game?
I don't think I can operate like that. I don't think I can operate and say, well, okay, yeah, he made all these mistakes, but still put us in a position to almost win the game. He made mistakes, and he made it more difficult for you to win this football game. Case point.
When did he put you in position to win the game? What did I miss? I mean, unless you're counting the ball to Ferkser. And here's one thing I'll say about Ferkser is this isn't Ferkser's first drop. This isn't Ferkser's first big drop. Ferkser has dropped the football. Remember Tampa Bay a couple of years ago? Remember against the Texans when Tannehill hit him around the goal line, a game you had to have, and the ball flew out of his hands and Whitney Merciless picked it up and took it back to the Tennessee 10 and Houston scored a touchdown? When you had no defensive backs out there against DeAndre Hopkins and Kenny Stills, and Anthony Ferkser dropping the football essentially cost you the game and cost you the division? Floyd told me one time that Tom Brady, one of the things about Brady was, if you drop a ball, Brady will give you another chance. You drop 2 balls, unless your last name's Edelman, it's not coming back. Like, once that happens, he's just not going to throw you the ball. And so I get that if you want to make an argument that this isn't Tannehill's fault, if you want to be Tannehill's agent and say that, then that's okay. You can do that. But I'm just telling you how I feel about Tannehill. And that is that he threw a ball to an ineligible receiver yesterday.
Yeah,
and I
that's
tweeted
so
that out, and people said, well, he was really throwing the ball to Henry. Who caught it? You're the quarterback. By the way, the ball was behind Henry. You're the quarterback. You make $30 million. I can't say that enough. You're the quarterback. And this is a guy that I thought you could win with at the highest level. And I'm starting to doubt it. Because the one thing I'll say about this is, like, I know Belichick's a great coach, but I kind of feel like Tom Brady made all those people better. She made Charlie Weiss better. He made Bill O'Brien better. He's made Josh McDaniels better. He's made all those receivers better. Like, Brady makes those guys better. I've told you, I think Peyton's put 5 people in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And he's going to put more in there. Like, that's what the great quarterbacks do. When you need to have the right coordinator, the right receivers, the right offensive line, the best running back in the NFL in order for you to be good, then you're really not that good. Then you are Trent Dilfer. Then you are Joe Flacco with the 2012 Ravens. And I don't think Tannehill's that. So, I mean, we talk about holding accountable. Tannehill's got to be accountable now. Now, I'll give Tannehill credit because he didn't bring him down the field to tie the game before overtime, and that was a drive where you had to have a touchdown, and he got a touchdown. But, I mean, this is, for me with Tannehill, I think it's been like a solid 2-year marriage where now I'm starting to see some red flags. And it's starting to bother me a little bit. And it started to bother me after that Ravens playoff loss when he couldn't bring them back. And he threw 165 yards in a game they took Derek out of it. It's starting to bother me a little bit. And so now you got to ask for more out of Tannehill. He's got to hold everybody else accountable. So you've got to hold him accountable because he's the quarterback. 615-737-1025. We're back to your phones next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. And I just said this. If you want someone that'll sit there and cry about the receivers being out, I'm sure there's a radio station for you. It's not this one, or at least it's not this show. And I listen to the other shows. They will not make that excuse. Even though Joe kind of went there for a second today, they won't make those excuses. But there is a radio station out there for you if you want to hear people make excuses for the Titans. 1025 The Game. Do you want to win a pair of tickets to see Daughtry at the Ryman Auditorium on November 3rd? Head over to YouTube and subscribe to the 1025 The Game YouTube page. You'll enter for your chance to see Daughtry. Once you subscribe, email us at promotions@cromwellmedia.com with your YouTube handle. One winner will be chosen on Monday, October 11th. Reaction Monday is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling at Stillman and Company on ESPN 1025 The Game.
Do you feel like on some of those sacks you may have had an opportunity to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker?
Yeah, definitely. That was one early in the red zone. It was totally on my fault. They were in a man pressure look. It's typically they peel the pressure with the back coming out of the backfield, and just wide open the flat. They didn't peel, so that's where the ball's got to go. I anticipated them peeling, but got to make sure. So that was 100% on me for sure.
There you go, Tannehill, asked by TD, do you think some of those sacks were on you? Said, yeah, one of them, and then he went over the one, which, a guy can say whatever he wants to say. You know how I interpret Tannehill's answer there? One of them was on me, but the other six were not.
Yeah.
How culpable do you think Tannehill is right now in the bad decision-making that it feels like we've seen out of him?
I mean, he has made some bad mistakes. Yes. For one, holding on to the football for way too long yesterday. I think that is a mistake that we've seen repeatedly over the past few weeks. Against Indianapolis, deciding not to slide. That's a poor decision that could potentially hurt the team. Tannehill gets hurt, and that hurts the team very much so.
Throwing the ball right in the middle of the field when two guys ran the wrong route?
Not a great decision. Am I out on Tannehill? No. Have I been pleased by his decision making? No. But I'm not out on Tannehill. I'm not going to say that he is a poor decision maker. I think that he is a leader on this team, and I think that he is exactly what the Titans need him to be. He's not a poor decision maker. He has just made poor decisions. But
how many games do you get, though, before you become
He continues this trend, and I might walk back those comments a little bit and say that I will label him a poor decision maker, but I'm not there yet.
There's something that one of the members of the old Titans coaching staff, the Malarkey staff, told me that I'll share maybe later today, maybe tomorrow. But there's something that one of those old coaches told me that really bothers me when it comes to Tannehill, and I'll share that at some point. But I'm down on him. I'm not out on him. I'm down on him because of how much I thought of him and the decision-making. Again, I'm not asking you to be Brett Favre. I'm asking you to make good decisions with the football. Let's go to your phones as promised. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Rob says he'll defend Tannehill. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, as the GM used to say, you don't know nothing about football, but we'll go on.
That's not a real good argument coming from you, Rob, but go ahead.
That's if you think that the throwing it to the lineman was Tannehill's fault, then the GM was right. You really don't know nothing about football. Derrick Henry was standing in front of him. If Derrick Henry had been behind him where he was supposed to be,
how do you know where Derrick Henry was supposed to be?
Because if Saffold had been in front of him, he would have been illegally downfield.
Saffold was illegally downfield. They threw a flag on that play for illegal man downfield.
Yes.
They just didn't accept it because they accepted the illegal touch.
Yes, because Henry was in the wrong spot.
How do you know? How do you know Derrick Henry was in the wrong spot? Tannehill threw the ball 2 feet behind Derrick Henry.
He was illegally downfield, dumbass.
Rob, they threw the flag for him being illegally downfield. They threw the flag and the illegal touching. Tannehill threw the ball behind Henry. I know Tannehill wasn't trying to throw the ball to Roger Saffold. I know that. You know who he threw the ball to? Roger Saffold. I know Tannehill wasn't trying to get sacked 7 times yesterday. I know Tannehill, when he threw the ball to Khalif Raymond, and Raymond got bumped, and Marcus Peters intercepted it, and you lost to the Ravens, and your season was over. I know he wasn't trying to miss A.J. Brown, who was wide open on the other side of the field. On the 3rd and 2 in that playoff game, when you were in Ravens territory, right before the end of the game, and Vrabel punted, and he threw to Jonnu Smith in double coverage, I know he wasn't trying to miss Cam Batson doing jumping jacks in the middle of the field wide open. But he did. And when you make $30 million, and when we're talking about Super Bowls, and we're saying things like that, then you don't get the benefit of the doubt. You know who gets the benefit of the doubt on a decision like that? Their quarterback yesterday gets the benefit of the doubt. You know when I give Ryan Tannehill the benefit of the doubt? When he lays the deep ball right in the hands of Josh Reynolds, and he drops it. And then, by the way, how about the loser's cramp out of Josh Reynolds? Drops the deep ball, rolls around holding his knee on the ground, and then is back in the game like 3 plays later. That was embarrassing.
Yeah.
That was embarrassing.
Yeah, that was a loser's crap.
But hey, Tannehill wasn't trying to throw the ball to Rodgers. No, duh. Like, no, duh, he wasn't trying to. When they played the Broncos and Marcus threw the ball 10 feet over Derrick Henry's head on a screen pass, and everybody said, oh, no. It's one of those days for Marcus. Marcus wasn't trying to throw that 10 feet over Derrick Henry's head. Just like how Ryan Tannehill yesterday wasn't trying to throw it behind Derrick Henry. So Derrick's trying to turn around to catch it, and then all of a sudden it ends up in the arms of Roger Saffold. It's still Tannehill's fault. And again, he's a $30 million 10-year quarterback. He's not a rookie. He's not Mac Jones. Michael up next on John Robinson. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I completely your opinion on John Robinson at this point. And he's on the hot seat right now, in my opinion. And I think we should all be holding his feet to the fire on that. The thing that I don't like about some of the, just a comparison, I know he's going to get compared to Chris Ballard of the Colts a lot. I don't hear anyone talking about firing Chris Ballard, though. And I think that's a mistake, too, because, at this point in their careers, they've done basically a very similar job. We've had more success than the Colts, but everyone thinks that Chris Ballard is like the second coming or something. So
I'm going to say
just don't
this, Michael. I appreciate your call. I'm going to say this about John Robinson, and I understand how the NFL works. Like, if they fired John Robinson, I think I'd give up being a Titans fan. We've seen terrible general managers. Mike Reinfeldt, Rustin Webster, when Jeff Fisher decided he wanted to take over personnel. We've seen that. We've seen 2 good general managers. We've seen 3 bad ones. And John Robinson in 5 years has 5 winning seasons. And this is going to be a 6th winning season. And I said they're going to win the division this year. But the draft classes is very concerning. That's all I say about that. To say today, they should fire Robinson. Whoa now. They lost to the Jets. I think they do have some. I think they have some problems. I think they have problems on the coaching staff. I wonder if their quarterback is good enough to get them over the top. I think they have too many injured players. I think all those things are true. There's a far cry from that in firing the general manager. So I'm not there yet on Robinson. We're back to your phones next. 615-737-1025. And I promise we will get to the text line because Caroline says there is a lot of texts on everything, but specifically Tannehill. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to your Tannehill calls and your Tannehill texts, I guess. We'll do that coming up next here on Stillman and Company. Invigorate Health. Are you feeling old? I'm starting to feel old now that I'm 32. Are you feeling old? You might be 42. You might be 52. You know that your testosterone goes down, if you're a man, goes down literally 1% every year after the age of 30. So if you're 80, you've lost 50% of your testosterone. That's why you need to give my friends at Invigorate Health a call. Go over out to Invigorate Health, and they will have a consultation for you, and they'll see what you need to make you feel young again. Whether it's their IV therapy, whether it's the M-Sculpt Neo, the non-invasive treatment that loses belly fat while gaining muscle, 25% muscle, 30% loss of fat. M-Sculpt Neo, it's non-invasive. Maybe it's hormone replacement therapy, for your vitality, testosterone, other things. Whatever it is you need, my friends at Invigorate Health, InvigorateHealthTN.com, Invigorate Health can do for you. And I believe in them, and I trust them, and that's why you should too. Again, just give them a call, and maybe they'll set you on the path to lose those pounds that you just don't know how to lose, or to feel the way that you want to feel, the way that you used to feel. It's InvigorateHealthTN.com. Again, InvigorateHealthTN.com. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025. The Game. We're taking your calls and your texts. It is Reaction Monday, powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. We are streaming live, video streaming on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, thanks to our friends at the law offices of Amanda Gentry. Titans Monday. So we're discussing Ryan Tannehill. And sometimes I think people struggle when you criticize somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They think it means like that you criticizing them makes you think that you just think they're the worst person ever. That's not true.
No.
I think Ryan Tannehill's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm glad Ryan Tannehill's your starting quarterback. But I need better decision making if you're going to be the quarterback of the team that this team should be. I don't think Andy Dalton can quarterback a good team to the Super Bowl. And I hope he's not Andy Dalton. Somebody texted me, a buddy of mine. And we'll get to your calls, as I promised, in just a second. But a buddy of mine texted me and said, you got to readjust your expectations from a Super Bowl quarterback with Tannehill as your quarterback. Literally, there's one team over the past 20 years that has won a Super Bowl without an amazing defense or Hall of Fame quarterback because Eli is going into the Hall. And I would say this. Yes, I know. Most of the teams that win the Super Bowl are quarterbacked by Tom Brady or by Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, or Peyton Manning. But Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl in the last 20 years doing it this way.
Nick Foles.
Nick Foles won the Super Bowl.
Joe Flacco.
Even the 2015 Peyton won the Super Bowl, and he wasn't Peyton when he won it. 2015 Peyton, you want to know what 2015 Peyton had? Now, he had a good defense. But you want to know what he really had? Good decision-making. That's what made Peyton special, was the same guy at the line that did all the hand signals and everything in Indianapolis, the scientist, was still there. He couldn't throw the ball like he could in Indianapolis. He couldn't move with the ball like he could in Indianapolis. But he knew everything like he did in Indianapolis or when he first got to Denver. And that was good enough to win a Super Bowl. And that's all I'm asking for from Tannehill. Just asking for that. Just good decision-making. Let's go to your phone. 615-737-1025. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tom is up next on Ryan Tannehill. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Tannehill, he does. I'm in the same boat as you. He's got to make better decisions. You got to get rid of the ball. It's the main thing. He just gets back there and holds and holds and holds. And now he didn't get any help from the line or his third-rate receivers. I mean, he had several drops. Now, I know this is a little off topic, but I got to get this out there because it's been infuriating me. A guy who I'm completely out on is Janoris Jenkins. I don't want to hear anybody else call him Jackrabbit. He is terrible. It's week 4, and every week they're just throwing at whoever he's guarding, and he's either laying on the ground watching them or he's missing a tackle, and it's every week. He should have been left in New York, and anybody we have on the practice squad or behind him on the depth chart can do exactly what he's doing.
That's just not true. Thank you, Tom. That's just not true. And I'm not a huge, look, when they signed him, I remember saying that day that they signed, isn't he a bad guy? And I went and read, all the incidents in his life for Wikipedia on the air. And so it's not like I'm the biggest, Jackrabbit Jenkins fan. But you say that anybody on the practice squad is better than him. That's just not true.
I agree with the fact that Jackrabbit Jenkins has been underwhelming for the Titans so far. But to say that, Breon Borders could step in and do the same thing that Jackrabbit Jenkins is doing, I don't think that's necessarily fair.
It's just not true.
Did Jackrabbit give up some big-time plays yesterday? Oh, yeah.
Well, you see, the one that you're blaming him for, I blame Borders for. The Davis touchdown, that was Borders who was next to him.
Okay.
And so Rabbit was back
he's
there.
Still responsible for 2 50-plus yard plays.
No, I think that's one of the 2 50-yard plays you're counting on him.
Okay, well, then 1 50-yard play.
But no. I said this when they signed him. He's like Malcolm Butler. So he's aggressive, and he's going to be aggressive, and he's going to intercept the ball that's going to win you a game, and you're going to be like, yay! And then he's going to get beat, and you're going to be mad. People have short memories. I think they forget how much they hated Malcolm Butler for the first 6 months he was a Titan. They hated Malcolm Butler. And Malcolm made a whole heck of a lot more money than he did. And they hated Malcolm Butler. And I'm like, this is who Malcolm Butler is. He's aggressive, but he's undisciplined. That's what Janoris Jenkins, Jackrabbit Jenkins is. And I also hate calling a grown man Jackrabbit too, but that is his name.
That's his name.
So when the team says that's his name, then that's his name. It's like if you were to say, hey, what's your name? And you're like, oh, my name's Bob. And you find out that really Robert is your middle name. Your real name is, Coalfield. And you just rather go by Bob because Coalfield is a weird name. So you
That's
don't want to
fine.
be
That's your name.
Coalfield Robert Smith. You just go by Bob Smith. Like, that's your name. And so I'm not going to sit there and say, nope, I'm calling him Coalfield. Like, I'm not doing that. And that's, the same with Jenkins and his name. And look, he's underwhelming. He's not very good, but people sometimes have to understand something about the NFL. And I think I learned this from Floyd. And that is that there is like a certain level of player that is not a great player. Is not an all-pro player. And is not even really a good player. But he is a starting caliber player in the NFL. And then there is what's below starting caliber in the NFL. Now, sometimes you luck out. And a Derek Mason, who's your fifth or sixth receiver, gets elevated to a starting position because of injuries. And then you find out, you know what? D. Mason's about to set an NFL record for all-purpose yards in a season. He's pretty good. He can get open on any corner in the NFL. He's pretty good. Then you have that guy. Most of the time, though, the non-starting caliber players that have been on other teams' practice squads before are usually not starting caliber players. And so when you sit there and say, they should have left him in New York and he's no good and then you're talking about putting a non-starting caliber player in the game over a starting caliber player. And that's what the Titans have risked that way too much. Like David Quessenberry, not a starter in the NFL. Jeff Swaim cannot even make the 2020 1-15 Jaguars. Not a starting caliber player in the National Football League. So when your reaction is to take somebody out and put somebody in who's not a starting caliber player, you don't become a better football team. And I'll use Dan Cruikshank as the example. I thought Cruikshank played okay. Yesterday, he gets a terrible pass interference call on the Corey Davis ball because he's not a starting caliber player. And we just have to keep that in mind. That bench this guy, bench that guy. Blaine Gabbert, not a starting caliber player in the NFL. They couldn't trust Mariota's health. What'd they do? They traded for Tannehill. Because even though Tannehill at the time wasn't viewed as a great quarterback or a good quarterback, still a starting caliber quarterback. And I just think sometimes people need to understand that. What do we got in the text line?
Well, JD texts in about the Tannehill situation and said Tannehill threw for 300 yards and a touchdown. He's not the big issue here. There are numerous more glaring issues than Tannehill. He's our man. Let's throttle back on him and put more heat on the people that are letting him get knocked on the turf or the coordinator calling the game to continually put him in harm's way.
So it's everybody else's fault.
I agree in the fact that I don't think Tannehill is the biggest issue that the Titans are facing this year, but I'm not going to say that it's not an issue. I think whenever you lose against the Jets, a team that had the worst offense in the NFL going into this game, when you lose that game, I think there's a little bit of blame on everyone, and I think that you can identify Tannehill as an issue in that conversation. No, Tannehill's not the biggest issue. I'm not calling to bring in a backup. I'm not calling to trade Tannehill, but I am going to say that, he has made mistakes that have hurt this football team.
I mean, everybody thinks that this is totally binary, right? Like it's either Tannehill's fault or it's not Tannehill's
and
fault. They don't look at it like Tannehill's culpable and he's on the list of issues. And because we hold Tannehill to a certain standard with the expectations that we have of the football team, that we need Tannehill to do his part to not be culpable. Like Derrick Henry, for example, I don't think he's culpable for yesterday's loss. I don't think Derrick Henry did anything wrong outside of he did miss an assignment on one of the sacks. But because we know that that's where Derrick Henry is weak, I can't sit there and say, Derrick, you have to do better. Derrick Henry makes $12 million and doesn't make the 16 Christian McCaffrey does because he's not used in the passing game or is not supposed to be used in the passing game. So I don't hold Derrick Henry culpable for what happened yesterday because I think Derrick did his part. I don't think Tannehill's the only one at fault for yesterday, but I think it's crazy to sit there and say, it's the line's fault, it's the coordinator's fault, because we did that for years and years and years with Mariota. We did it, and I did it. I thought and I still to this day think the Titans ruined Mariota with all the coaching changes and coordinator changes and Matt LaFleur and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's your career. And I made every excuse in the book for Marcus. Marcus spiked the ball on third down against the Colts. Ryan took the delay of game against the Jets yesterday. He's culpable. And you have to hold everybody accountable. Brady's told a story. Or I should say Matt Castle told a story one time. And I like Matt Castle when he was the backup quarterback of the Titans, even though he was no good. And Matt Castle said that one time they were practicing, and there was a play that was run in New England, and Castle didn't motion the guy on the opposite end of the play the way he was supposed to, and Castle looked at the other side, and they ran the play well in practice, and everybody clapped, and Brady just lit Castle up. And Castle said to Brady, Tom, it didn't even matter in the play. Like, it's a motion on the other side. And Brady said, because if you're going to hold everybody else accountable, then you've got to hold yourself accountable. So when it comes to Tannehill and he gets sacked 7 times, Tannehill needs to be able to look at his line and tell them where they're screwing up, or tell them, don't do this, do that. But if he's not seeing the protections correctly and he's not reading the blitzes right, then he's not doing his job. And this is what gets me, like that one caller that said on the thing that, well, Henry wasn't supposed to be where Henry was. How the hell do you know that? That's one of the reasons why I hate Pro Football Focus, because they grade players on plays that they don't even know what play was called. How are you supposed to know? There was a play yesterday where David Quessenberry didn't block anybody, and Tannehill gets sacked. Well, maybe Nate Davis took the guy that Quessenberry was supposed to take. You don't know that. I don't know. So if the Jets are showing something and Tannehill misreads the blitz and he gets sacked because he's telling the offensive line at the line of scrimmage, 34, 34, 34, and then 17 is the one who comes and blitzes, isn't that his fault? But you don't know that. So, I mean, you're the quarterback. Life is a two-way street. I try to explain this to you. I learned this when I was really young, about how life is just simply a two-way street sometimes. And so, like pro athletes or famous people, or they'll say like, oh, it's so hard being famous because I can't go out and enjoy a beer. Okay. Well, when you're making $31 million and I'm not, that's the two-way street. So Tannehill is a guy that everybody likes. I like Tannehill, but he's your quarterback. And the quarterback does get the blame when you don't win. When you go to Football Reference and you look at player stats, it doesn't tell you how many games Julio Jones won in Atlanta. It tells you how many Matt Ryan did. It is a quarterback stat. And that team sucked yesterday, the Jets. And you have to beat them. And they didn't. So I get it. Coordinator was bad. Sure. Offensive line was bad. Same offensive line Tannehill took to the AFC title game. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Back to your phones, 615-737-1025. Plus, there is something that I'm starting to think about on the Tannehill front that may not be Tannehill's fault, but I do wonder who's to blame. And if even the Titans know, we'll get to that coming up next. Here on Stillman and Company, Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. You know that I use Hiller at my home? That's right. Anytime I have an issue, my friends at Hiller are the first people that I call, because every single time they do fantastic work. That's why their motto is happy you'll be, or the service is free. And I absolutely love telling you about Hiller. And you've noticed all the inventory shortages and empty shelves everywhere. And now there are serious equipment shortages that are on the way about products for your home. Like HVAC systems, tankless water heaters, and generators are going to be extremely limited in 2022. If you need a replacement, call our friends at Hiller today. Don't wait until you are out of options. And everybody knows how that feels, and it stinks. Hiller has special financing available where you buy now and you pay nothing until next year. Their work, again, is backed by the Happy You'll Be or Services Free guarantee. Learn more at happyhiller.com. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vanderbilt. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Get the delay with 20 seconds.
Didn't have any timeouts left. Yep, it's tough. Not much we can, other than trying to spot it. They're up there, 11 guys at the line of scrimmage. I'm sure Ryan's doing his best to try to get us into a protection that's going to allow him to at least have a chance to get the throw off. And we got down there underneath, and there's nothing that we could do at that point in time. Just, obviously being at your best in the critical situations that we show them every week, and that happens every week in this league, is really critical.
There you go. That was Vrabel yesterday on the delay of game. And I kind of felt like Vrabel's answer there was trying to not throw Tannehill under the bus, but with the concept of there was nothing I could do there. Like, I normally, when Vrabel gives that kind of answer, or when a coach gives that kind of answer of, hey, it wasn't my fault, everybody's like, okay, coach, shut up. But I think, like for Vrabel to say that about, well, we didn't have a timeout, it's tough. We get down there, and I know Ryan's trying to get into a protection, and, and we didn't have any timeouts, so we couldn't do, and, that's why we got to show him critical plays and teach him. That's him throwing Tannehill under the bus without throwing Tannehill under the bus. I mean, that's Vrabel saying at some point the players got to do it. At some point there has to be some responsibility on the players. And so somebody tweeted me and said, it's crazy to say that Ryan Tannehill was one of the many problems yesterday is wild. I'm sorry, those delay of game penalties just get themselves, don't they?
And I think that you can also say that Tannehill was a problem and also did some good things. Those two things can exist. You can make mistakes and still make big plays. I mean, Josh Reynolds dropping the ball on a very critical down is not Ryan Tannehill's fault. That's Josh Reynolds' fault.
Yes, though I do hold Tannehill accountable for the Ferguson drop. Like, and not accountable like you threw a bad ball and you did this or you that. But, like, at some point you have to stop trusting Ferguson. At some point you have to say, like, dude, you just don't catch the ball enough. And I know he's trusted Ferguson sometimes, and Ferguson's made great catches. The New England Patriots game. In the playoffs, Ferguson made a couple of big catches. I get it. But when you got a guy who fumbled away the division or dropped the division against the Texans 2 years ago, and he drops the ball that would have won you the game yesterday, at some point you got to tell that guy, you get one more crack at it, and if you don't, I'm never throwing you the ball again. Because then it's on Ferguson. Then his career's over, because if Tannehill won't throw him the ball, he's done. Mm-hmm. So now you got a choice to make. But that's the quarterback holding people accountable. And I don't know if Tannehill does that or not. I'm not there. I can't comment on that. The Reynolds thing, I mean, Reynolds has to catch the football. And it's like, if you want to be on this team, if you don't want to be inactive on Sunday, you have to catch the ball. But that's one example. For that example, I can give you him throwing the ball at Roger Saffold. I can give you the protection issues. Where is Tannehill to sit there and read the blitz? The thing that we thought was the strength. And that's where I kind of turned my attention to Todd Downing a little bit. And I wonder, is the big issue here that Arthur, because I thought the offense, and Vrabel was every time he was asked about Arthur, he would say, well, him and Ryan have a great relationship. Was Arthur the one who was protecting Ryan Tannehill? That this good decision-making that we saw from Tannehill last year, that we feel like we're not seeing this year, that was Arthur who was putting Tannehill in positions with play calls that would give him the right choice to make. So instead of Tannehill having to make the right choice and us relying on Tannehill doing it, that Arthur set it up so these are the choices for you to make, and whichever choice you do make is a good choice because Arthur was a good coordinator.
But I also, in regards to saying that was Tannehill's fault for giving the ball to Anthony Ferguson, I don't know if I would 100% agree with you when your top two wide receivers are out. I mean, when almost every receiver on that field was dropping balls. Josh Reynolds dropped a ball. Nick Westbrook-Akina has dropped balls. I mean, you're not working with your elite guys out there. Who else is he supposed to throw the ball to?
This is the NFL.
Okay.
So we can make excuses. We made excuses for
I'm not
Marcus.
making a mistake, but I'm saying that Tannehill should know better than to throw the ball to Anthony Ferguson.
No, Tannehill should hold Anthony Ferguson accountable. And I don't know if he's going to do that. I've told a story at practice one time. Anthony Ferguson fumbled the ball. Marcus was quarterback. And one of the bigger issues I think we can all agree with Marcus was that Marcus couldn't get up in a guy's face and basically say, either you do this or pack your, go
Your
home.
stuff.
Ferkser fumbled a football. And I watched Marcus. And I could not believe Marcus's reaction. And so I went to practice that day, and I said on the air, I'm like, I cannot believe Marcus's reaction. And Floyd told me, he goes, what? He gave him a pat on the butt, didn't he? I go, he went over, talked to him, gave him a little pat on the helmet and a pat on the butt. And that was it. And I was like, at some point, you got to get these guys on the right page. If you don't trust a guy to throw him the ball, you got to tell Todd Downing, don't put him in the game. Don't put him in a position that's going to get us beat. That's what the quarterback does. That's what the Mannings and the Bradys and the smart quarterbacks do. And that's what I'm asking Tanner. I'm not asking you to be Brett Favre and throw it 95 miles an hour through three guys into traffic wedge it in for a touchdown. I'm asking you to be smart with the football, make good decisions, hold your guys accountable. I get it. If Josh Reynolds is dropping the football and you don't trust him so you don't want to throw him the ball, I understand it. But now you got to find somebody out there you do trust. We never did this to Steve McNair. We never said, well, Yancey Thigpen, Kevin Dyson, and Carl Pickens are hurt, so we can't blame Steve McNair for... No, Steve McNair went and turned Derek Mason into a Pro Bowler. Steve McNair took Chris Sanders, who had to take a pay cut to stay on the team, and started throwing it deep to him. Like, that's where... And again, I said this yesterday, or at the top of the show, you can blame everybody today. Everybody except for Derrick Henry and Harold Landry can be blamed. Mike Vrabel is not doing a good enough job, in my opinion, holding these coaches accountable. I just asked you the question, how much of this is Todd Downing's fault? Yeah, how much is Todd Downing? Because, Ian, you were talking about during a break that you're down on Downing right now.
I was not a fan of this past week, Downing, no, and the offense in general.
Can I say one thing about Downing? And this is a Vrabel, and this is one of these ones where I get mad at Vrabel because Downing probably did it, but Vrabel's got to be there to stop it. Late in the game, 3rd and 4. I think it was 3rd and 4. 3rd and 4. And you know you're going for it. Well, if you know you're going for it, then 3rd down is really 2nd down. Because you know you're going for it on 4th down. And he takes Derrick Henry out of the game? What? Like, Derrick at this point is getting about 4 or 5 yards of crack, and he's busted a couple. I mean, there were a couple where Derrick Henry was this close to taking it to the house. Mm-hmm. And so it's 3rd down and 4. You're driving, and it's going to set up, and I think they didn't get the 4th and 4. And so you're driving, and it's 3rd and 4, and you take Derrick out of the game? Would you ever take Derrick out of the game on a 2nd and 4? I don't think you'd ever take Derrick out of the game on 2nd and 4 unless you've handed it to him 5 straight times. And so they take him out. The Brewer snap over Tannehill's head was a 3rd and 1, and Derrick was out of the game. They're lined up in the shotgun. So I see some of the people that are disappointed in Todd Downing. I see you today. I hear you. I still think that, Bowen bothers me way more than Downing. I mean, again, Corey Davis running wide open with nobody by him. We've seen enough Corey Davis. In fact, it's borderline a miracle that Corey didn't pull a hamstring running by all those guys at some point, because that's something that happened to him a lot when he was here. And so I know Corey Davis is not Jerry Rice. So when he runs by your DBs and there's nobody there, just like Tyler Lockett did, just like Christian Kirk did, just like all these other guys have, and they all did last year. I mean, good grief. Calvin is up next on Tannehill and Henry. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Calvin.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Jared. Hey, at least we completely agree on the Todd Downing thing. It's unexcusable, and it's both his fault and Vrabel's fault. Vrabel's doing the same thing he did last year with Shane Bowen as far as letting him just take the reins and take the blame. Vrabel is just fine with taking a paycheck and never getting scrutiny from the decisions that are being made. He's the head coach. He has the final say. There's no way Derrick Henry, a top 5 playmaker in the National Football League, arguably the number one, if McNichols, he was catching the ball great and he's making plays, if that's the answer, then put Henry at wide receiver as a decoy. He's got to be on the field, especially in overtime, especially on that 3rd and 4 that you're talking about. decision, Jared. Like, that guy's a competitor, and he's really doing, in my opinion, no sacks. There's 3 sacks that were on him. But in my opinion, he's trying as hard as he can, and the offensive line is terrible. Taylor Lewan is terrible, and Ben Jones is old. I mean, that's just the fact. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that Lewan's terrible. I don't disagree with the fact that Ben Jones is old. I said Ben Jones' cap number is $7.1 million. Mm-hmm. I said this offseason, you got to call Ben into the office and you got to tell him, hey, $3 million. And if he's not willing to do it, then he's gone. And you eat $1 million and you save $6 million against the cap. And I mean, everybody was like, no, you can't let Ben Jones go. And you can't. I'm like, he's old and there is nobody in the league that would pay him what you're paying him. Taylor Lewan, I mean, I think the bed's already made. I think he's gone at the end of the year.
I mean, he's going to have to do something incredibly remarkable for the rest of the season to make me change my mind about what I think the Titans should do with Taylor Lewan at the end of the season.
I think the writing's already on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Downing, I mean, you want to be mad at everybody, be mad at everybody. I'm just saying we have to hold Tannehill accountable around here. I'm a Tannehill fan. I need people to understand that. I wanted Tannehill over Tom Brady, and I love Tom Brady. But people need to understand, I love Tom Brady.
You love Tom Brady.
I love him. I almost cried last night watching the game. I was actually rooting for Belichick. But I love Tom Brady. And I wanted Tannehill over Brady. Because I thought, hey, you know what? Tannehill's the guy. Tannehill's this. Tannehill's that. Well, you can't. The caller said, only 3 of those sacks were on him. That costs you the game.
Only 3.
Only 3. And not only that, I have no idea if the caller's right or wrong. And neither do you. Like, that's the thing people got to understand about this placing blames on the sacks. Vrabel knows whose fault it is. Because Vrabel knows what play was called. Vrabel knows in practice what they told the players to do when that play was called. Vrabel knows what Tannehill is supposed to be looking at. And if Tannehill sees what he's supposed to see, what he's supposed to change the play to, Vrabel knows all that. But if you were to ask Vrabel, hey, Mike, how many of those sacks were Tannehill's fault and how many of those sacks were the offensive line's fault? You know what he's going to say? Well, it's all of us have got to be better. The play
caller. It's all a team effort.
It's not about one guy being better. It's about everybody being better. But you don't know which sacks were on Tannehill. The one thing I'll say about the offensive line is this, and then I will drop it. That line, outside of the right tackle, that line was the same line that could not block in 2019 at the beginning of the year. And we were saying, how is Marcus supposed to be able to win games? When they signed Saffold, who looked like the biggest bust in the history of Titans free agency, before Clowney. When they signed Saffold and he can't block, and Lewan's got his PEDs and he's come back and he's not any good, and Jones is, old, and Davis is coming in there and he's a rookie, and when this line, they can't block, they can't. Tannehill goes in there, all of a sudden they can block. And Ian brought up the point during the break that I completely agree with, was at times, I thought Tannehill was shell-shocked yesterday from all the sacks.
Well, I don't blame him.
He had happy feet at times back there.
You've been in the league for 10 years.
Well, he looked terrified because he was terrified.
You can't be terrified when you're in the league for 10 years. When you're a $30 million, who can be terrified? Their guy. Because their guy was in his 4th game. You cannot be a $30 million 10-year quarterback and be afraid of the rush.
Then protect your $30 million 10-year quarterback.
How?
What do you mean how?
What do you want to do? Block better? Put new guys in there?
Blocking better would be great.
The quarterback is part of the protection. Like, the quarterback is part of this.
I think that there are a lot of factors to it.
But the quarterback is the central part. Just like when we didn't allow us to make excuses for Marcus, and Marcus went out, and that line that couldn't block, could not block, all of a sudden with Tannehill is the line ever. They're the best line in the league. They're so physical, and they took it to the Ravens, and it's the same guys. It's the same line coach. It's the same head coach. It's the same guys. These guys have never been able to pass block. There was a game against the Saints 2 years ago where Jack Conklin and Taylor Lewan, who are literally $30 million worth of tackles, got eaten alive because Derrick Henry was out that game. And so when you're in passing situations, the defense can come after you. And that's why all these guys on the Jets we've never heard of, yesterday are like, he's one of the best guys in the league. Like, yes, the quarterback, though, is a part of that. The ball has to come out. The protection has to be changed. The play has to be changed. That's what the quarterback does. It's the hardest job. That's why you get paid the most. That's why being good at it makes you incredibly valuable to anybody. If you're a good right tackle, like a solid Pro Bowl right tackle, what would you be willing to do to move up in a draft to get an all-pro caliber right tackle? How many picks would you be willing to give up?
At this point?
No. Just on any team. You need a right tackle.
Uh-huh.
You see this guy sitting out there in the draft. You can move up to get him, but it's going to cost you. Like, would you trade a first, next year's first, a second, and next year's second to go up and get a right tackle?
I don't think I would do 2 firsts.
Okay. Would you do?
I would do a first and maybe 2 twos.
A first and 2 twos to go up and get a right tackle?
Yeah.
You do realize that in the NFL, you would give up 3 or 4 ones to move up to go get a quarterback.
Yes.
San Francisco spent 3 ones when they had a quarterback to go up and get a quarterback, the third quarterback. And we don't even know if this guy's any good. And San Francisco did it. It's the most valuable position because it is the hardest position.
I understand how valuable the quarterback position is. I understand that. But I do think at a certain point, I mean, I'm holding Tannehill accountable 100% because I do think that part of it, he is to blame. But I think that you cannot put all of it on Tannehill. The fact that he's getting sacked 7 times a game.
I'm not, but people are acting like that's not part on him.
It is part on him, but it is not all on him.
It is part on him. Just like when Derrick Henry runs for, this offensive line that everybody hates today had a 2,000-yard rusher last year. So is Derrick just that good?
Or is the Titans' offensive line really only good in run protection?
Well, history's already told us.
Yeah.
that. We already knew that.
They atrocious in pass protection.
But Tannehill's got to be better. The ball's got to come out. Mm-hmm. Brady's had a terrible offensive lines in front of him at points in the past. He gets by with it. That's quarterback in the NFL. Back to your phones next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. TriStar Moving. They are my official movers. I absolutely love TriStar Moving because as much as I hate moving, they make the process so simple. When I decided to move last year, I was looking for a moving company that would, take care of me, make it so that it didn't just break my entire budget and it not just be a disaster. Because I think some of us have had moving company disasters. TriStar Moving was everything I had hoped for and more. That's why their motto is TriStar Movers with 5-star service. Everything was taken care of. Everything is protected, including your old home and your new home. That's why I'm glad I used them. Their owners, Garrett and Robert, true Nashvillians, and they want to help out this community as much as possible. TriStar Moving is online at nashvillemoving.org/radio. That's nashvillemoving.org/radio. If you tell them that Jared Stillman sent you, you'll get 5% off your entire move. Again, those are my official movers at TriStar Moving. 615-640-1219. 615-640-1219. Tell them that Jared Stillman sent you. Stillman and Company, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Titans Monday, Reaction Monday, powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Let's give away some Predators tickets later in the show. That we will do. Hiring new employees is a real struggle right now for everyone, so we want to help. Join us for a free recruitment seminar tomorrow at the Hotel Preston in Nashville, or this Wednesday at the Drury Plaza Hotel in Franklin. Both come with free breakfast, some great door prizes, and tips to help you recruit and retain employees. Go to thegamenashville.com/register for more info and to sign up. What's in our text line, Caroline Fenton, as we go right back to your phones?
JD texts in and says the Titans' O-line is injured and depleted. Yes, Tannehill holds on to the ball too long, but that is on him.
I would say that the offensive line is too old. I think that is surely true, right? Like Saffold. I mean, here's what's crazy. At the end of the year, Ben Jones is a free agent, and I can't see the Titans re-signing him. He's too old, too injured, too everything. So you're going to need to find a new center. Roger Saffold, I believe, comes at like a $12 million hit, but you can save like $9 million by cutting him. I would be an advocate of doing that because I don't think he's a $12 million player. Taylor Lewan, I believe, is a $13.9 million cap saving if you cut him. He's 15.9 or 14.9 against the cap, so you're probably going to cut him. David Quessenberry can play. You can get a David Quessenberry anywhere. No disrespect to David Quessenberry, but he's a replacement level player. So that's it. So really only Nate Davis is the only guy that the Titans are committed to beyond this year. And they're not even all that committed to him. But do you know how hard it's going to be in an offseason to find a left tackle, a left guard, a center, and a right tackle?
Especially when your general manager has a history of not drafting incredibly well.
Well, most people that go out and do those things don't think that they're not capable of doing it.
Say that one more time.
So, like, John Robinson is not going to think, if John redoes the offensive line this offseason, he's not going to think that he's not capable of doing it.
Correct.
He's going to say, look.
He shouldn't think that he's not capable of doing it.
He's going to say, look, I drafted Jack Conklin. I drafted Nate Davis. I signed Ben Jones, and I signed Roger Saffold. So I know what I'm doing on the offensive line. Like, that's what he's going to say. I'm not saying that that's the case. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, like, that's what he's going to say. Or that's how he's going to feel. You know, like he's going to feel like he can do it.
Well, he shouldn't feel like he can't do it because it's his job to do it.
Do you know how hard it is to do all of that? How hard it is in one offseason to fill your entire offensive line, then have your entire offensive line gel?
Well, I've never done it, but I can only imagine how incredibly difficult that is.
I'd say it's pretty hard.
Yes.
So, like when the Titans went to the Super Bowl, they had a first-round pick at left tackle. They had a Hall of Famer who was a first-round pick at left guard. They had an All-Pro who I think was like 4 or 5 years into the league at that point at right tackle, who they ended up losing in free agency because they just couldn't pay him even though they wanted to bring him back. Like, those are the resources you have to spend in order to be successful on the offensive line. I say all of this, though, to say that everything you say about this offensive line, these guys, when Derrick Henry goes to the Hall of Fame, it's this line that got Derrick Henry to the Hall of Fame. So pass protection is an issue and has been an issue before Tannehill was the quarterback. Now, Tannehill made it a lot better when he took over for Marcus. And I'm just saying, like, I just wish that it's all together. It's not just the line stinks, the line coach this, the line that. I mean,
the line's not great.
TD thinks the line coach is great. He goes to practice and says the line coach is great. So, can't be the coach. So now all these guys that are going to get Derrick Henry 2,000 yards 2 years in a row, these guys all suck now? Like these guys that were top of the market guys that have made the Pro Bowl, these guys all suck now?
But I don't think it's a matter of, do they suck, do they not? Oh, because look what they've been able to do for Derrick Henry. I think we've established that in run protection, this offensive line does what they need to do. They have for a while. It's pass pro that's the problem.
Well, it's going to be a problem.
Yes, but that's not okay.
I mean, most teams, when they're put in passing situations, are not good in pass protection. Most teams are not.
But do most teams let their quarterback get sacked 7 times a game?
I mean,
against the Jets?
I wouldn't say, around the league that happens, doesn't happen. I can't tell you what the other teams do. I would say this, though. Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator when they got sacked 9 times in a game. And everybody blamed Marcus. And nobody blamed Matt LaFleur. And Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator when Calais Campbell took over a game at Jacksonville, and they embarrassed the Titans. And Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator when they couldn't block Frank Clark in the AFC title game. So everybody's like, Downing, he's the worst. Well, Arthur had the same problems. Matt LaFleur, who everybody except me loves, had the same problems. Marcus had the same problems. So it's like we didn't give Marcus a pass. So now we're going to give Tannehill a pass. For the same problem. The same problem that literally an hour ago you heard a 2-year-old podcast of Floyd saying the exact thing that happened yesterday.
Yes. Floyd said something 2 years ago that is the same thing. The Titans are still experiencing the same issues. I'm not saying that Tannehill gets a pass, that everyone else is the issue and Tannehill is just all shiny and roses and he makes all the great decisions. I'm not saying that. I think that everyone plays some sort of blame when you lose against one of the worst teams in the NFL, if not the worst team in the NFL.
And I think that this has gone on so long because there's been so many texts and calls about this that now this is going to turn into Jared blames Tannehill for the loss, and that's not the case.
I think he is on the list of blame.
Yes.
There are a lot of things to blame that loss on.
The list of who not to blame is a whole hell of a lot shorter.
We can talk about that and be done
the list
in 15
of who's
minutes.
on the list to blame. 615-737-1025. Back to your phones next. Stillman and Company. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving. Let's go right back to your phone, 615-737-1025. By the way, someone sent me in a tweet and said, sure, Tannehill's made some questionable decisions we're not used to seeing, but I believe that is due to him fearing for his life on almost every pass play. Again, same offensive line it's been. Do you think every great quarterback has always had a great line? Now, Troy Aikman, for example, Troy had a great line. But you're telling me that that Brady, Manning, Brett Favre, that they've never had substandard offensive lines?
But you
ever?
can't tell me that Brady, Manning, Aaron Rodgers, any of these guys who have had bad offensive lines haven't gotten at least a little bit shaken up at some point because they have bad protection in front of them.
Watch the 2015 AFC Championship game where the Patriots had a bunch of backups in the offensive line. The Broncos had Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. I mean, this was when the Broncos had that defense that was just freaking stacked.
Lights out.
And it was so loud in Denver they had to use a silent count. Well, if you use a silent count, the tackles have to look at the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So they look at the ball for when it snapped. So you don't have the advantage of being able to know when the ball's coming out.
Right.
So literally Von Miller and you start at the same time. Normally you get a little bit of an edge knowing when to start, whereas Von has to wait to see the ball be snapped. Brady got killed in that game. Killed. At the end of the game, Brady drove him down, scored twice. Was vintage Brady getting killed. And the only reason they lost is because Gostkowski missed an extra point. So they had to go for 2 at the end of the game, and they didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go for 2 because they missed an extra point. Like, the idea that every great quarterback hasn't had to live with the fear of getting killed is just not accurate.
But I think that's also why Tannehill is not Brady.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons.
Do we expect Tannehill to be Brady?
No, but we don't expect Tannehill to throw for 500 yards and beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl down 28-3. We expect Tannehill not to get sacked 7 times against the Jets. We expect Tannehill not to throw the ball right over the middle, right to the defender for the Colts. What I'm saying is this. I'm not asking him to be Brady. I'm asking him to not be Marcus. And it's like that's the problem with Marcus, in my opinion, was that Marcus got scared. That Marcus was afraid of making a bad decision. You go back to Marcus's first 2 years when he could play with reckless abandon. I mean, Marcus looked like he was going to be a dude. But then Marcus got scared. And every time he went to throw, I don't know. Marcus had a year where he threw 26 touchdowns and 9 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Marcus was at one point good. He would have made the Pro Bowl that year if he didn't break his leg. So, anywho, that's all I got on that one. What do you have in the text line?
Matt from Murfreesboro texts in and says, I'm afraid this team is John Robinson's culmination of mismanagement and personnel decisions. No depth, draft picks not producing, literally having a kicker every other week. Not great, 9-8 train.
So Chad Withrow said this on the show Friday, in which he thinks that John Robinson's essentially been bailed out by 2 moves, trading for the Derrick Henry pick and trading for Tannehill. And I have a hard time saying yes to that, only because they've had a lot of success over the last couple of years and a lot of success with guys he's brought in. Like, I've seen bad general managers. And I've seen, like, if John Robinson was such a bad general manager, how do you run through a draft with Jeffrey Simmons, A.J. Brown, Nate Davis, who's the fourth? Amani Hooker and David Long Jr. all in the same class? Like, you don't do that normally. Like, I don't know how you do that. Do I think Robinson's becoming an issue? Like those last 2 classes? Yeah, it's an issue. It's an issue. And he knows it's an issue too. And I think that's the thing that I kept asking him about during the offseason. And honestly, I think it kind of pissed him off. But I think he's got to get down to the bottom of whoever is part of his group who's feeding him information that he can't run with, whether it's a scout, whether it's an assistant GM, whether it's the coaches, whatever it is, he's got to get those guys out of here. Floyd used to tell me, Floyd used to always draft starting offensive linemen in like the 4th and 5th rounds. Guys like Jacob Bell and Eugene Amano and David Stewart. And he would draft Benji Olsen. And he said it was really easy because he had Mike Munchak as the offensive line coach. Mm-hmm. So he just got those guys in the draft process around Mike Munchak, and that Mike Munchak could sniff out whether or not those guys were any good. Or whatever he was looking for, Munchak could figure it out. Personality traits. Maybe Robinson needs to look at his offensive line coach and say, okay, are you giving me the right information when I draft Isaiah Wilson or I draft Dylan Radins? Are you giving me the right information? Because these guys clearly aren't ready when they get here. What else we got?
Ron texts in and says, all I have to say is our offense sucked, our secondary sucks, and I yelled at the TV when we scored in the fourth quarter to go for 2 and end this horrific game. The way they were playing, I knew we wouldn't win in overtime. Also, how in the hell do you have a delay of game when you're trying to get into a position to kick a field goal with no timeouts left? A badly coached game. It was a trap game.
Anybody? Let's kick it around the room. Anybody have a problem with Vrabel not going for 2 yesterday? Caroline.
No, I don't have a problem with it.
Ian.
You mean to force overtime?
No, to win the game.
To win? Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem with it either.
It'd be easy to say, yeah, I have a problem with it because the Titans went to overtime and then lost, but I'm not going to say that I disagreed with Vrabel going for 2 against Indianapolis.
See, that's
and then all of a sudden disagree with it now.
See, that to me, that is what gives talk radio a bad name. The guy that would say, well, he didn't get it, so he should have gone for it yesterday. That is what gives talk radio a bad name. The one thing I think that I'm pretty good at is, like, even though, like, I may change my opinion on somebody, I feel like the thought process that allows me to get to where I get usually comes from the same place every time. That it is consistent. Like, there are things that I value that other people don't value. Like, I don't like, flamboyant players that are going to come in here and upset the apple cart. Some guys, Kansas City, Dallas, they don't care, and they can win with it, and that's fine. But that's not me. And so I do think that Vrabel was asked yesterday, or today, Vrabel was asked, did you give any thought to going for 2, or do you regret not going for 2? So I'm just like, guys, can we not ask that question? Because as soon as you ask that question, that's where every coach turns into, these guys have never had to make a decision in their life, and here they are second-guessing everything. And it's like, I don't second-guess that decision. I don't. When they scored, I'm like, kick. And I honestly, we haven't touched on this much. I said kick because I thought your defense was going to get a stop. And the knife through butter that New York in overtime just moved down the field, that was embarrassing. Like, get a freaking stop. I got to tell you, 2 times the defense couldn't get a stop to me that just drove me insane. That was one of them. The other was when they scored a touchdown to make it, I believe, 17-all.
17-10 maybe?
No, I want to say they made it 17-all.
Was that 17-all? Yeah.
When they tied 17-all, and you needed a shutdown 3-and-out from the defense. The offense is rolling. Derek looks like he's about to pop one, get the offense back on the field, and that was when they hit Corey Davis on the bomb. And I'm just like, okay, all right, fine. Defense was awful. Just awful.
It was just
awful.
I mean, Jackrabbit Jenkins was just atrocious.
God, he borders. I mean, they all. It's just, but you know what though? It's like every game it's somebody. Yeah. Every game it's somebody, and there's a wide receiver just running wide open, and I just don't.
Too many blown assignments. Too many
blown assignments.
And I'm not going to throw Harold Landry under the bus because he does not deserve that at all. But the fact that the Titans only got 1 sack yesterday and the Jets have been giving up 15. The Jets have given up 15 sacks in 3 games. Titans got 1.
It's the NFL, people. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones, I promise, but coming up next. How culpable is Vrabel for everything that we're mad about right now? How much is it Vrabel's fault? 615-737-1025. We'll discuss that next, and we'll take your phones. It is Reaction Monday, powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. That's next. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Titans Monday. It is a reaction Monday powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. I think people think that I like hosting shows like this.
That you like complaining about the Titans after a loss?
Yes, that they like 4 hours of constant bitching.
I can vouch for you that you probably hate doing these shows more than anything.
I hate it. I mean, I hope people understand that. Like, I mean, look, I understand that I'm the guy in town who has to take coaches, general managers, star players out behind the woodshed and spank them on the butt sometimes. I don't like doing that.
It'd be so fun to talk about how great everyone was and how great everything was and how the Titans are set up in such a wonderful position and how fun this season is going to be. I love that. I would love for rainbows and butterflies.
You know, sometimes what I think in my head is, like, I'm not the most modest person in the world, but I also think that, like, the proof is in the pudding. I'm, like, a pretty good broadcaster. And I think I could do this if I really wanted to. Like, if I just was Mr. Johnny Go Team. You know, that if I got up here today and said, look, they didn't have A.J. and Julio. I mean, what were they supposed to do at wide receiver? And you can't be mad at them on the offensive line because they've had injuries, and David Quessenberry actually played okay. And, I mean, obviously Adrian Hill, and I'm going to say this right now, because this is a no-excuse zone.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian Hill's crew yesterday sucked. Oh, my God, were the officials bad yesterday. And that's not, like, I'm not even sure they totally changed the game. I can't tell you how many times the Jets got away with pass interference that had it been A.J. or Julio, they would have thrown the flag simply because it was A.J. and Julio, but instead it was Nick Westbrook-Akina. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, they got Crookshank.
Adrian, well, that's because he just stood there and hit the guy in the back. Adrian Hill's crew was so bad yesterday. The one that got me was the ineligible receiver thing where we had to literally take like 8 minutes to discuss it, and CBS went to commercial. And also, Mike Vrabel should not have to call timeout in overtime in order to get them to review it. So they were terrible yesterday. So, like, I think I could be like Johnny Go Team, and I do wonder, like, if you were to take like a kind of a pros and cons chart or like a graph and say, okay, here's what the listenership would be and the money Jared would make if he was just exuberantly Go Team all the time. And this is what it is now, where it can be a little controversial for him ripping people on the rear ends. There is no doubt in my mind that the Johnny Go Team, I'd make more money. No doubt in my mind. If I was just a complete kiss ass, that I would make more money.
Well, if you would have shown up today and said, well, you know, the Titans didn't have AJ or Julio, and the refs missed so many PI calls, and, you know, what are the Titans supposed to do if they're bit by the injury bug? I would probably take your temperature and call 911 and say, I don't know who this person is, but it is not Jared
You're like,
Stillman.
This sounds like another radio station in town. Doesn't sound like this radio
I'd be
station.
a little bit confused about what was going on up there.
Yeah. So Mike Vrabel.
Yes.
How culpable is he in all of this? You know, like, how much can you put the blame on Vrabel? The one thing that's great about football, I think there's a couple things that's great about football. Number one, blame is so hard to assess in football because most people, and I'm going to include myself in this, don't really know what they're talking about. Like, having spent 5 years with somebody who probably knew as much as you could know about football, or who at least the people that I think we all would say know the most about football, Belichick, Saban, value his opinion, like, having been through that experience, I know how little of the game that I know. And so it's so hard to assess blame. Like the sacks. Do you blame Downing? Do you blame the line? Do you blame Tannehill? Do you blame, do you give credit to the Jets? Do you blame the receivers for not being able to get open? It's easy. Like, you can blame whoever you want. And there's no real answer because the people who know the real answer aren't going to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
How much, though, is Vrabel culpable in the Titans and their loss yesterday? Maybe not just with the fact that this is the umpteenth time in his coaching tenure that they play a team that is not a highly regarded team on the road and they don't come ready to play. I think that's on Vrabel's shoulders. What do we make of the fact that the offensive line can't get it figured out to pass protect for Ryan Tannehill? Is that a Vrabel issue? The busted coverages, is that a Vrabel issue? How much blame do you put on Mike Vrabel for yesterday?
Well, I think you bring up a point in the Titans just not showing up ready to play. That's a repeat thing that's happened with the Titans where they repeatedly play down to their opponents. They play up to their opponents as well, which is the great side of that. You know, the Titans had no business of beating the Seahawks in Seattle, but the fact that they've played down to the Jets, I think that is a Vrabel issue. But I don't think that you can blame Todd Downing or Shane Bowen for anything and not also kind of point your finger at Mike Vrabel because those are his guys.
Are we done blaming Bowen from now on, and now just everything that's a Bowen issue goes to the feet of Vrabel?
I mean, it gets to a certain point where you kind of have to point at Vrabel because this is your guy. Vrabel is a defensive guy. Vrabel's a defensive coach, and he has no business in having a defense that's this bad. Sure. So I think you get to a certain point where you kind of do have to point fingers at Vrabel and say, what are we doing here, Mike? This is your guy, and he's making repeatedly the same issue.
Sometimes, and I go back to what Wesley Woodyard said, which was that Mike stepped on Dean Pease's toes too much, and that's why Dean Pease left. And considering that it took Dean 20 seconds for Arthur Smith to have a job before Dean went back into the league with that trash group, tells me that there's probably some truth to it. And everybody knows how much respect I have for Dean Pease. I mean, I just think Dean Pease is the cat's meow when it comes to defensive coordinators. I say this all knowing at the same time that I do think that Vrabel probably has his hand a little bit too much in the pot on the defensive side of the ball, and that I find that to be very frustrating. I don't know it, so I can't, accuse him of it. But I almost look at it like, you know, Vrabel was not a good defensive coordinator in Houston, and they had injuries, and you can make whatever excuse you want, but I think they were like 31st in the league in defense the one year that he called the plays. And I just wonder if Vrabel is a good coach but not a good coordinator. We always say certain guys are good coordinators, but they're not good head coaches. But we almost never sit there and say, this guy is a good head coach, but he's not a good coordinator. And I think Vrabel's attitude, like the arrogance, I don't know how much to look at last week's game or, yesterday's game and pin on Vrabel and say, because the way Vrabel sounds in a press conference is, Vrabel's arrogant or Vrabel's this or Vrabel. Vrabel was talking up the Jets last week. He really was.
I do have to credit them that we were so concerned about the Titans overlooking this game. And maybe they were. And they were just turning something on for the press conferences. I'm not throwing that out as a possibility. But Vrabel himself and every single player gave credit to the Jets where credit was due pregame.
And some of us out there in this world, some of us picked the Jets to win on Sunday because they knew this team wouldn't be ready to play. But then again, that's a Vrabel thing if they're not ready to play on Sunday. So basically, the head coach is going to be defined by winning and losing anyways, and we all know that. But I just wonder how much blame you really think Mike Vrabel deserves. How much blame would you put at his feet? Because I started off the show and I said, look, you can blame Robinson. He's invested in all these injured players, Caleb Farley, Bud Dupree, Julio Jones, and they're all hurt. You can blame Robinson because they don't have a starting right tackle and they don't have a tight end. They're getting nothing out of their previous two draft classes. You can blame Tannehill, as I said. 7 sacks. The guy can't get the ball out a little bit quicker. The guy can't read the blitz and say, okay, we need to change play here. That's the job of the quarterback. Guy takes a delay a game. Put that on Tannehill. They can't find a kicker. I'm not sure that's Vrabel's fault. So you can blame whoever you want to blame as long as the name's not Derrick Henry. I just wonder how much we put it on Vrabel. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. And I'll say this about Vrabel coming up. There is one thing that I think I'm done as far as Vrabel's concerned with. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company right here, ESPN 1025. The game is streaming on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Thanks to the law offices of Amanda Gentry. Stillman and Company, it's Reaction Monday. It's Titans Monday. It's ESPN 1025, the game.
Were you happy with the week of practice leading into this, Mike?
You know, I mean, I don't think that really – I'm never really happy, Joe. I think that, you know, it's practice, right? It's going to be mistakes. There's going to be corrections. I thought that Friday was good. I'm not, you know, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is Sunday and what you do and perform on game day. We've had weeks that probably practices wasn't great and you won. You said, oh, man, we had a great week of practice and got beat. So we have to play better when it counts. And there was a lot of opportunities out there that we left out there. And a coaching and playing perspective, you know, that's just what happens when you lose.
That was Vrabel. You know, practice, you know. I think practice is important. I will say this, though. Floyd told me that when he was at the Vikings, there was a coach who took notes on every practice every day, and at the end of the year, piled together, you know, like this was a good practice week, this practice, whatever, like all kinds of number crunching, and came out to determine that it didn't make one bit of difference how good practice was during the week.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That an entire Viking season, that it didn't make one bit of difference as to whether or not they felt like they had a good practice or a bad practice as to how they performed on Sunday. So there is that. I think it's just more important that the guys actually do practice.
And that's what I was going to say. Good practice, bad practice, it's practice. You're at least going out on the field as a team.
Yes, you're at least practicing.
Yes.
You know, you're at least doing it.
Yes.
That having been said, here's the one thing, though, as far as whether or not we blame Vrabel, and we'll get to your phones in just a second. The one thing I would say is I am officially done with them not showing up in a game like this. So the next time this happens, and it will happen, and I don't know, when they're playing a team that's not very good, on the road, early kickoff, they're going to have a sleepy CBS crew. I don't know the next time the Titans will play a horrible team that's winless in a noon kickoff in a game that they should win and will be favored mightily.
Next week?
Oh, Sunday.
Yeah, I believe it's
Sunday. All right.
It's sooner than you may think, everyone.
So, the next time they play and they do this, it's going right at him. Going right at him. Because I'm done. I'm done with the Cincinnatis. I'm done with the Buffalo Bills in 2018. I'm done with it. This is the NFL. Get your team ready. Get your team ready to play. Because if that ball goes in the end zone, on the first drive, the second drive, if you get up 14-0 on the Jets, if you get up 17-0 on the Jets, that ball game is over. Instead, you got up 9-0. You busted a coverage. Corey Davis caught a touchdown or caught a deep ball that led to a touchdown. Now it's 9-7. And the Jets crowd that was booing the Jets is right back in the game. So we're going to take out our old motto, Ian, either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. And we are going to apply this to any time they play some crap opponent that they should beat the stuffing out of. We will do that now and lay it right at the feet of Mike Vrabel. So I've asked, how culpable is Vrabel in this? Because I don't know. I don't know how much you blame Vrabel. I go through my tweets, because if you follow me on Twitter, I literally, it's like the Jared Stillman live reaction sports show during the game. And I'll look at my tweets the next day. It's like a journal because it allows me to see, okay, what was I really mad about? Oh, I was mad about that.
I was mad.
I remember about that play. Oh, yeah, let's make sure I don't forget about that. And I'm able to talk about it the next day. There weren't a lot of complaining about Vrabel that I did. Now, Derrick Henry coming out of the game on 3rd and 4, that was one of them. That was one of them where I'm like, no. But from now on, any game like this, I don't care what happens, it's on him. When they are more than a 5-point favorite against a crap team and they lose because they play like this, it's on him. Let's go to your phone, 615-737-1025. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. What do we have in the text line?
James disagrees with you. James says it's the GM. Multiple years with the same problems. Pass protection, kickers, drafting injured dudes, etc. Not solving glaring issues at tight end, etc. All of those issues are on the GM.
So I understand, that John Robinson. Here's what's crazy. They're going to win the division this year probably. Think about this, right? This Jets game. This happens. This is the NFL. The Titans went 1-4 to start the 2002 season. They lost to Steve Spurrier and the Washington football team. And when we think about Urban at Jacksonville, Spurrier was every bit the disaster without the sex scandal. which apparently now Urban has. I'm sorry.
Throw another one on the docket.
Just, Spurrier never had that. Then again, times were different. Cell phone cameras were different. Who knows?
I'm a man of faith.
But did Urban say that?
No. I'm just, no. He might have.
Urban said he put himself in a bad situation.
Yeah, he did.
He said that.
Yeah, you're correct, Urban.
Yeah, when you're putting your fingers in
places where your
they
fingers aren't
shouldn't
supposed to
go,
be.
especially when you're married in public, that's not a good idea. But neither here nor there. What was I talking about? John Robinson. So, the Titans ended up in the AFC title game that year. Look, they lost to some really bad teams. They lost to Jacksonville in 2019 at the beginning of the year. They lost to bad teams last year. They lost to the Bengals last year. The Titans are going to, ultimately, the Titans, I think, are going to win the division and make the playoffs. Now, are you going to be able to beat any good teams? I don't think so.
But is it not fair for me to say that it doesn't really mean a lot for me if the Titans win the division?
So
I think it would mean more to me if they didn't win the division.
So the Predators in 2019 won the division, and Peter Laviolette got fired like 6 months later. So it didn't matter then. Like, it really didn't. I mean, I thought it maybe should have mattered a little bit more because this was an organization that had never won a division until the year before. So maybe, be a little grateful for the fact that you've never won a division ever. Now you've won 2 in a row, and you fire the coach midway through the next year.
But that's not the case here.
It didn't matter. Well, in all fairness, the Titans hadn't won a division until last year, since 2008. But
this division is maybe the worst in the NFL.
This division is dog hurt.
Bad.
I mean, it's bad. And that's why you're going to win it. Because it's so bad.
Yes.
But, I mean, the thing that's crazy about the Titans, and especially with Vrabel as the coach, they could beat Buffalo. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, yeah, I know we lost to the Jets, but hey, we beat Buffalo, so you see, we're a good team. And I'm kind of like, those just cancel each other out at that point. I mean, to me, it's hard for me to see this group right now going on a run, given all the deficiencies I feel like they have. What else we got?
One texter texted in and wants to know if we agree that it has become insane to take Derrick Henry out of the game on third downs at all and take away the threat of I'm running and they would stack the box. Leave him in there to block as best as he can because it seems that's all we have anyways. Guys that are there and not blocking well when Tannehill is now leading 7 sacks in a game.
First series of the game, Tannehill got sacked on a third down because Derrick Henry and David Questenberry missed their assignments. Second best player on offense yesterday was Jeremy McNichols. I mean, the idea of, Henry stays on the field no matter what, I don't agree with. 3rd and 7, I'd put Jeremy McNichols in the game. 3rd down and 4, when you know you're going for it on 4th down, I leave Derrick Henry in the football game. Because at that point, to me, a 3rd and 4, when you know you're going for it on 4th down, is essentially 2nd and 4. Because, again, you know you're going for it on 4th down. So you've got 2 plays to get 4 yards. Well, if you give it to Derrick, the chance that he's going to get 4 yards are probably 60-40. And even if he doesn't get 4 yards, then he's probably going to get 3. So now you're setting up 4th and 1 or 4th and short or 4th and inches or whatever, which is a much better 4th down than 4th and 4. And when you take Derrick out of the game, you're telling the defense what you're doing. The touchdown to Cam Batson was all a decoy play to Derrick where he ran to the left and then Tannehill just, tossed it off to the right. So I think there are situations where Henry's got to be on the field. And I think the Titans need to understand that more. That 3rd and 4 was a classic example of that. But then again, Arthur Smith at times, and we all love Arthur, and I love Arthur, but Arthur would make similar mistakes at times, when I thought to myself, you got to keep the guy out on the field. What else we got?
Curtis from Bucks Nation texts in and says, I'm calling it now. The Titans don't win the division. The Colts do. They're going to get better as the season goes on, and they will win the AFC South.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I mean,
especially now that the Titans, where it stands, has the tiebreaker.
Indianapolis has the Ravens this week. You don't.
They play Tampa Bay this season.
So when you have the
Titans
Ravens,
play New Orleans.
When they have the Ravens, you have the Steelers. When you have New Orleans, they have Tampa Bay. You're not. This is the thing about the NFL, which is we've seen the Titans lose this game a lot and still make the playoffs. We saw Mike Mularkey go to Arizona and San Francisco when they weren't very good, and they lost both games. And they still made the playoffs, and they beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. We saw the Titans in 2019 lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. We saw them get shut out 16-0 by the Denver Broncos, and they ended up making the playoffs. They got embarrassed by the Carolina Panthers after they made the quarterback change because A.J. Brown couldn't catch the football and Deion Lewis fumbled, and they made it to the AFC title game. So we've seen this before. So, again, you're not as bad as your worst performance. The one thing that bothers me, though, is in 4 games this year, I haven't seen one solid 4-quarter performance. And that bothers me. Not one solid good game out of the Titans. And we've got 4 games now. You know, I always told you, hey, be careful about September football because September football can kind of throw you off a little bit. And it's October football now. Now's when you got to start stacking wins. Now's when you got to get on a run. Now's when you got to find your identity. It's October football. And there's a difference between the two.
And I said from the beginning, how long are we giving this Titans team? I said 4 weeks. 4 weeks is up. So, I mean, I don't think that we can make any more excuses for, you know, the lack of practice in training camp or they need more time to gel or whatever it may be. 4 weeks is up.
Yeah, it's, you know what's crazy, though? Like when I told you guys on Friday, I know people are going to be like, you're going to say I told you so, you're going to say this, you're going to. On Friday, I told you, I said 3 games. Pittsburgh, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, New England, this game. I said everybody thinks those are going to be 3 blowouts, and I guarantee you one of them's not. One of them's going to shock you. And the Patriots were a 56-yard field goal away from making it 2 games. This is the NFL. And that's the one thing that maybe I didn't take seriously enough in the years that I did this show with Floyd. But this happens a lot. I used to always say, you know, the Titans always get to the big moment and they always screw it up and he would tell me, you do realize that's how every other team feels too. I said, what do you mean? He goes, felt that way in Detroit, felt that way in New England, felt that way in Minnesota, felt that way. And so I wouldn't get too, you know, I wouldn't jump overboard right away, right now, because all of a sudden you see that you lost to the Jets and now you think you're the worst team in the league. Like, I wouldn't. The biggest loser in the Titans losing yesterday, other than the Titans, and the Titans were definitely losers, but the biggest loser outside of the Titans, Jacksonville. Because the Titans are going to, I think, you know, I told you last week on Monday I was scared to death. Titans are probably going to go to Jacksonville and stick their foot up the Jags' rear ends because they're probably going to have the best week of practice they've had the whole season. 615-737-1025, back to your phones. Plus, there's one thing this morning I could not stop thinking about. It's very personal. It has to do with the Titans game, and I want to get to that next. Then we'll hit the NFL headlines with Caroline. We'll do that all coming up. Support Stars on Saturday, October 16th by running, walking, or boogieing the Nashville Striders' 21st annual Shelby Bottoms Boogie 15K and 5K run/walk at Shelby Bottoms Park. This event is perfect for the avid runner as well as the casual jogger, or show your support and participate virtually. For more information, visit starsnashville.org. Hey, join us for the pregame show. That's right. Coming up on Sunday as we get you set for Titans and Jags, we'll be at the Corner Pub hanging out in Bellevue. Mark Howard, Chris Sanders, very excited about that. Again, 9:30 to 11:30 for the pregame show. Pregame show brought to you by TriStar Moving, Parman Tractor and Equipment, FreedomTireGuys.com, FanDuel, E2 Roofing, Hillside Medical, Social Furniture, and Screwball Peanut Butter Whiskey. We'll get to the headlines in just a second. One thing that I have had stuck in my head all day today is I started the show off last Monday talking about how I knew I was going to be upset about that Indianapolis win because the Titans played so sloppily. And I said I can hear what Floyd would say. And all day Friday I was talking about, this is the NFL. And I just kept hearing that from Floyd about, I could have seen 3 years ago before this Jets game me saying, they're going to beat the Jets, just like Robbie and Rexroad's whole week was. They're just going to beat the Jets. And I could
to be fair, that's what they should have done.
But I could have I heard in my head, whoa now, this is the NFL, okay? I heard that over and over again. And I just kept wondering last night and this morning, I was like, what would Floyd say today? Because I picked the Jets on Friday. So, the number one thing he'd go to is to say, well, you said that we weren't going to lose. How'd that look? This is the NFL. Well, I can't do that. Because I was scared to death all week about the Jets. And because I said I picked the Titans to lose because I just have seen this too much. And I've seen this way too much. And I could not. Normally I can hear what he'd say in my head. And today and last night, I couldn't hear that. Ian, what did you think he'd say?
I don't know. That is a good question. On a game where you lose, where you're expecting to win and you're expected to show up and play well, he would probably say, hey, good teams, when they're a good team, they show up week in, week out, consistently, and no matter who you play, you're always at that kind of same level. And there's certain teams that can get to that level, and there's certain teams that aren't quite there yet.
I think he'd have a really hard time with this because of the Robinson criticisms. I think he'd struggle with that because, they don't have a starting tight end. And he knows they don't have a starting tight end. And those are the things that really get up his rear end. And I could just see him being like...
Right tackle, too, probably.
He'd hate the right tackle. He would just try to avoid it, though. He wouldn't ever throw Robinson under the bus. But... I don't know what he'd say.
Do you think that he would say what he actually thought?
No, but I think he'd give us a little bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing that one where they played the Chiefs, and he was talking about how bad the offensive line was. Or when Marcus spiked the ball on third down, we had an hour-long show because the Predators had preseason games. And so we did an hour at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3 for a Titans Monday after the Titans just totally blew it against the Colts. And, he just went off on Marcus spiking the ball on third down, and I was like, whoa. And I think we may have seen some of that today. Like the Tannehill delay a game, I think he'd have lost his bananas over.
Oh, yeah.
I think he'd have lost his mind over that.
I think that most people lost their bananas or would have lost their bananas over Tannehill's delay of game.
Let's go to, it's time now for headlines around the league with Caroline.
We're spanning the sports world. It's Headlines with Caroline on Stillman and Company, right here on Nashville's best sports talk. ESPN 102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Headlines with Caroline, presented by Firo Tequila, the spiciest infused tequila on the market. The world belongs to the brave. Can I just say before you get going, how about Brady Belichick last night?
It was such a fun game.
Great game.
It was a great game. Terrible weather.
But that's a Brady Belichick game. It's New England, it's Foxborough, bad weather.
Did you see the hug?
I did see the hug.
The hug was a little uncomfy.
Do you know that Brady and Belichick went into a locker room after the game or before the game or something and just caught up?
And just chatted?
But they didn't want the cameras and everything and whatever.
Well, that is so un-Belichick-like to show any sort of emotion while there are cameras and reporters around.
Sure.
But I saw that hug and I was like, oh gosh, that was so felt so forced.
But everything. The only time I can remember Bill, having a moment where he really was when they lost the AFC title game in 2015, and all the cameras were on Peyton because you knew this was Peyton's last hurrah, and he was going to the Super Bowl, and Brady was talking to Peyton at midfield for a while, and they shook hands and hugged.
And
then
that's
Belichick,
a spectacle in and of itself.
Oh, it was huge. And then Belichick, works his way through,
Yeah.
and he's talking to Peyton. He's got his hand over his mouth, like cupping it so people can't see what he's saying. And he talked to Peyton for a while like that. And you know that was Bill telling Peyton, hey, congratulations.
Oh, nothing but
Competing
respect.
against you for 20
Yeah.
years was, that kind of thing. But Bill's the kind of guy that he's not going to waste time. He doesn't want you to think that he's thinking about things that are sentimental until it's time to think about the things that are sentimental. That's just how Bill Belichick is. Every time you ask him about stuff, he says, hey, when I'm done, we'll have all the time in the world to talk about this stuff.
But I think that Steve Belichick also is a talking point from last night. I mean, the hair, incredible. But we have some headlines to get to. So Patrick Mahomes has been the consensus favorite for NFL MVP since the sports books even opened up MVP betting. And he has now been nudged out for the first time since then. Kyler Murray overtaking Patrick Mahomes as the consensus favorite to win NFL MVP. Kyler Murray is currently standing at plus 550, followed by Patrick Mahomes closely behind at plus 600, Josh Allen at plus 800, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers each sitting at plus 900. So a fun little betting tidbit for you there.
I would just like for all the people that are going to go, what do you think now, Kyler Murray, Jared? We had hour-long discussions about, could this be the year that Kyler breaks out and wins the MVP?
I didn't think that it was going to be, but we at least did have the conversation.
We
entertained
brought in the idea that this could be the year that he breaks out. I didn't watch the game last night.
I didn't
watch the Kyler game, but, they kicked the Rams' ass. What's next?
Yes, they did. Jimmy Garoppolo out with a right calf injury. He left the game yesterday in their 28-21 loss to the Seahawks.
Goodbye, Jimmy. Bye, Jimmy. It was nice.
Bye, Jimmy. So Trey Lance came in and replaced him. Jimmy G did get an MRI on his calf this morning, so we'll get a few more updates on that. Said that he felt the injury in the opening series of the game, continued to tighten throughout the game. He started to feel it in his Achilles, so that's when he decided to ultimately pull it. He said it's not an Achilles tear. It's not that serious, but he does feel like it's bad enough for him to be out for at least a couple of weeks. And if he is out for that period of time, Trey Lance will make his first regular season NFL start next week against none other than Kyler Murray and the unbeaten Arizona Cardinals. So that's going to be a really big test for Trey Lance.
According to Adam Schefter, though, apparently Kyle Shanahan's changing his tune. Schefter says not ruling out Jimmy G for Sunday.
Do you buy it?
Yes. These coaches don't want to play rookie quarterbacks.
Well, yeah.
The thing.
But do you think would he rather not play a rookie quarterback, or would he rather not play a hurt Jimmy Garoppolo?
I think I'd rather play a hurt Jimmy Garoppolo. If Jimmy gets hurt more, then I go play the rookie quarterback. I don't want to ruin the rookie quarterback. The thing people have a hard time understanding, because fans want to see rookie quarterbacks.
Right.
Rookie quarterbacks don't win in the NFL. People think it's like, oh, yeah, play Justin Fields, Matt Nagy. Why do you want to play Andy Dalton?
The whole Justin Fields saga in Chicago is getting exhausting.
He clearly doesn't think that Justin Fields is ready.
And what we've seen from Justin Fields really hasn't been all that remarkable.
I mean, the one thing that I hope never happens, at some point I'm sure the Titans will be bad enough that they have to draft a quarterback in the first round. If the coach and the GM are adamant that the guy's not ready and are willing to lose their jobs over it, then more power to them. Because I saw him ruin Marcus. I saw him ruin Vince Young. I'm pro sitting. Best quarterback of all time, sat on the bench as a rookie. Best quarterback in the NFL right now, sat on the bench as a rookie. Reigning MVP, sat on the bench as a rookie. Just saying. What's next?
Tom Brady surpassed Drew Brees last night for all-time passing yards leader in the NFL. So he came into the game.
Did you notice who didn't care about that yesterday?
Tom Brady.
Tom did not care yesterday.
It was very underwhelming the way that it all happened.
So I was listening to SiriusXM this morning, and they said, because I was trying to not listen to Robbie and Rex Show, I didn't want to listen to any Titans talk, and then I ended up listening to Robbie and Rex Show, and I got mad.
Classic.
But I was listening to them, and they said that the NFL told the Patriots and the Bucs that they wanted to make this a big deal.
Well, of course they do. Because if they hadn't made a big deal about this game anyways, of course when a record like that is broken by a player of that caliber coming back to his old team and him breaking that record at his former home field, that is the recipe for just ratings. out the wazoo. Of course they wanted to hype it up a lot, but it really was not hyped up at all.
So supposedly the Patriots were like, okay, we'll do something, make it kind of a big deal. But because the confusion on the play of which one
it was 1 yard.
And Brady wanted no part of like a celebration on the field.
A tribute video.
I think sometimes, though, Tom and Bill need to suck it up and do it for the greater good.
And
the fans want it.
Fans.
The game wanted it. The fans wanted it.
I wanted it.
Sometimes Brady and Bill need to suck it up a little bit. Those are headlines with Caroline presented by Firo Tequila. We got a Monday Night Football game to bet on. We'll do that coming up. I'm going to squeeze a call in here just because I want to. Thomas is up next here on Stillman and Company, Reaction Monday, powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Go ahead, Thomas.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha, go.
Okay, I've got one thing. Todd Downing lost that game at the very end when they got the penalty against the Jets, and it was a 5-yard. They had an offside. Why was not Derrick Henry in there for second and third down just to do 2 runs, kick the field goal, and at least would have been a tie?
Oh,
That's all
my
I gotta
God,
say.
the fans. Oh, thank you, Thomas. The fans would have lost their Kool-Aid had the Titans literally played for a tie.
But, I mean, play for a tie or play for a loss?
Well, no. At that point, you're still playing to win.
Yes.
So,
Well, they were playing for a tie.
No. But
With
you
that
don't,
final field goal.
So to me, that's not playing for a tie. That's you don't have another choice. That's
Okay,
like filing bankruptcy, right? Like when you do that, you don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You have to file for bankruptcy. This was you're going for the win. Here you go. And had the Titans started running the football and then spiked it with 3 seconds, like it was setting up for a game-winning end of regulation field goal. Oh my God. I wouldn't have even I mean, I thought it was a crazy question Dave Rabel got asked, is it weird that you try to kick the field goal to tie as opposed to win? I'm like, dude, it was 4th down with 17 seconds left. What was he going to do? Throw to the end zone? That was the only other option was a Hail Mary. That's it.
And I think that would have been so much more frustrating.
Oh, I'd have fired him if I owned the team and he didn't.
Still has to be weird as a head coach going all right, let's go out there and tie this game.
So I don't
But,
think,
I mean, you're right. I mean, what is he supposed to do there?
I
Gotta
think
kick it, but
everybody knows. This happened a couple years ago when Vrabel opted to not tie with Philadelphia. It would have been like a 50-yarder to tie. It was a 4th and 2. They got it. Mariota hit Davis in the end zone. They won the game. And everybody was like, I'm so glad Vrabel went for it because I'd rather go for the win than accept a tie. And I'm sitting there like,
no.
You do realize that a tie is significantly better when all is said and done in the NFL than a loss.
Yes.
That
is pretty logical.
I don't think people know that.
That would help in the tiebreaker for sure.
It would help
100%.
astronomically. I told my dad, I said,
I think that any situation is better than a loss.
I said, you could beat the Rams by 45 points on Sunday Night Football, and losing to the Jets is a bigger deal because of the AFC tie-breaking implications. And we know because over the last couple of years, it's been a factor with the tie-breaking implications. We'll do Caroline's coming up next, 615-737-1025. It is Reaction Monday. It's Titans Monday. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, Preds Insiders comes on as soon as we're off. So let's give away some Preds tickets for Preds Insiders. Be caller 5 right now, 615-737-1025, and you will see the Preds and the Hurricanes at Bridgestone Arena on Saturday night, Saturday, October 9th. Good luck for that. I went to the game on Saturday. Preds kicked that rear end against Tampa Bay.
Did you have fun?
Of course I had fun.
Good, I'm
Great
glad.
company. Great company.
Good.
Had a lot of fun. Time now for a Monday Night Football edition of Carolines.
Get in on the action. Put the money on the mahogany. What's on tap on the sports books? It's time to break it all down with Carolines. Here on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Carolines is brought to you by BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook for over 25 years. You can sign up at BetUS.com, mention game, and get a sign-up bonus on your first deposit. We've got a Monday night game tonight, Raiders at Chargers. Give me the Chargers. I'm going to take them on the money line. The spread here is 3. I do think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to take the Chargers on the money line, minus 164. If you do take the Chargers against the spread, it's minus 3, minus 110.
So I think I picked the Chargers on Friday on six-pack picks.
You pancaking?
No.
Mrs. Butterworth?
I'm not. But this, to me, is like a big test for Justin Herbert.
100%.
Because it's like you showed everybody how good you can be by beating the Chiefs. Now we got to see if you can do this every week. I do not get excited about rookie quarterbacks. Like people the other day were saying, you can tell the NFL's in good hands with Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. Like, Like, I am not getting excited off of young quarterbacks because
I don't think that's necessarily
so
fair.
Hard. It's just so hard for young quarterbacks in the league. This is a big one for Herbert. I'm going to take the Chargers. It's a big one for Herbert.
Mm-hmm. Over-under in this game currently sits at 51.5. I'm going to take the under on that game, minus 105.
You know what I realized going with the over-unders, like when we were doing a check at the sports books in yesterday's game during the pregame show?
What?
I don't think Chris Sanders has ever placed a sports bet in his entire life.
Why? What did he say?
He just is like, he was like picking the over for every Titans, like, oh, over that, over. I'm like, Chris, if you ever, they can't all be over. Well, at some point, there's got to be something that's under.
There is a sportsbook commercial, and I will not name it because it is not BetUS, but there's a sportsbook commercial, and the spokesperson for it says, hitting overs, hitting unders, and hitting money lines. Yep, those are all 3 sports betting words. Good going there.
Yeah. What's the over-under?
Over-under is 51.5.
Over.
All right, minus 115. Also, anytime touchdown score. I'm currently...
Darren Waller.
I was going to say Darren Waller. Darren Waller, plus 130. You can also take Austin Eckler, minus 110. Mike Williams, plus 110. Keenan Allen, plus 130. Josh Jacobs, plus 150. And Hunter Renfrow, plus 250. Darren Waller, the baller, plus 130 all day on that
What's
one.
that number? You said 130 on Darren Waller?
Plus 130. I feel like that's easy money right there.
So I think Darren Waller is going to score tonight, and I do like Austin Eckler. I think
I do like Austin Eckler, but there's just not great value on Austin Eckler compared to the rest of these guys.
Because he's
minus
probably going to score.
110.
Keenan Allen's the one that surprises me. Kind of low there. I'll take, if you want to take Darren Waller, I'll take Keenan Allen.
Okay.
So I'll take him as an anytime touchdown scorer. BetUS.
Carolines is brought to you by BetUS, America's favorite sports book for over 25 years. You can sign up at BetUS.com, mention GAME, GAME, and get a sign-up bonus on your first deposit.
That's it for us. We're out of here. We're back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Preds Inside.